Chapter 1045. Generally speaking, there were two sources of Tao fruits. First, it was by killing others, and second, it was artificially cultivated. The probability of the former was too low. The higher the grade of the Tao fruit, the lower the probability of condensing it after death. The latter, on the other hand, had a very high chance of obtaining Tao fruits. As long as they were nurtured properly, there would definitely be harvests. There were many different ways to cultivate the Tao fruit. Some people planted the Tao by sowing the seeds, just like how farmers farm their fields. Some people surrounded the lake to cultivate the Tao, just like how fishermen raised fish. There were also people who set up the spirit gathering array to gather the power of heaven and earth to condense it into the Tao fruit. But in reality, there was a third source of Tao fruit. There was also a type of Tao fruit that was naturally nurtured by the heavens. With a tree as its root, it didn't need anyone to nurture it. After experiencing the changes of spring and autumn, it would automatically produce a Tao fruit. The ancient Buddha Tao fruit was such a case. The ancient Buddha Tao fruit was not cultivated by humans, nor was it harvested by killing people. It was a fruit borne by an ancient Xiantian tree. This tree was called the ancient Buddha tree. It grew on the sacred mountain, and was said to have been left behind by a saint. The tree bore fruit once every 1,000 years, and the number of fruits it bore each time was limited, no more than 100. Most of these fruits would be distributed to the various sects on Sacred Mountain. Only 10 to 20 would be left for the ancient Buddha convention. The threshold to participate in the ancient Buddha assembly was extremely high. Normally speaking, cultivators that weren't immortal reverence wouldn't be able to participate. There were also many other restrictions. Even so, every single ancient Buddha gathering would attract experts from all over the world. Many people came for the sake of having a taste of the ancient Buddha Tao fruit, causing the number of participants in every ancient Buddha gathering to never be less than 100. Over 100 people sharing 10 to 20 ancient Buddha Tao fruits was obviously not enough. When there were too many monks and not enough gruel, a Tao fruit would often need to be cut into several pieces for several people to eat together. The number of ancient Buddha Tao fruits that everyone could eat was limited. Initially, Tu Huang thought that even if Ning Fan had obtained the ancient Buddha Tao fruit, he would probably only have one of them. If they split it evenly, then each person would eat half. However, when Ning Fan took out 6 ancient Buddha Tao fruits consecutively, even Tu Huang could not help but feel a little surprised despite his vast experience. After that, he frowned and asked, "You said that you obtained this ancient Buddha Tao fruit from Hongzhang's storage pouch?" "Yes, it's something from Hongzhang's storage bag. The ancient Buddha Tao fruit is extremely valuable. With Hongzhang's status, he doesn't have the qualifications to possess 6 Tao fruits. Do you understand what I mean?" Tu Huang thought for a while. Ning Fan probably did not know how rare and precious the ancient Buddha Tao fruit was. Thus he told Ning Fan about the origin of the ancient Buddha Tao fruit. Ning Fan's brows furrowed after listening to his explanation. "Miss, are you saying that this Tao fruit doesn't belong to Hongzhang himself, but was given to him by some powerful being? And, at the very least, one has to be at the same level as the 5 sovereigns of the Middle Prefecture to be able to take out 6 ancient Buddha Tao fruits at the same time. Even the immortal sovereigns of the Middle Prefecture would most likely have to accumulate for many years in order to leave behind so many ancient Buddha Tao fruits. After all, the Saint Mountain only gives each immortal sovereign of the Middle Prefecture 1 fruit every 1,000 years. Could this Hongzhang be a subordinate of some Middle Continent great emperor? It could be the great emperor of the Middle Continent or someone from the Sacred Mountain. However, these are just speculations. If these guesses are true, then you killed Hongzhang and seized the ancient Buddha Tao fruit. This matter is very likely to have offended an immortal emperor-level character. If this is true, who is the person behind Hongzhang? You're asking me. How would I know? To me, the subordinate of a newly advanced immortal venerable is just a trivial matter. In the past, I wouldn't care about it." Tu Huang yawned, silently expressing that she was no longer interested in Hongzhang's topic. Once again, Ning Fan felt that it was a mistake for him not to search Hongzhang's soul, but to kill him with his sword. In this way, he did not even know who was behind Hongzhang, and which immortal emperor he might have offended. Although he was not afraid of it, he found it rather troublesome. Fortunately, cultivators had a photographic memory. Ningfan recalled the scenes during Hongzhang's strength test. When Hongzhang displayed his abilities, almost all of the immortal emperors wore a surprised look on their faces. It seemed like they did not know much about Hongzhang. Buddha tier emperor was the only one who seemed to have a clear understanding of Hongzhang. Is it possible that Hongzhang is Buddha tier emperor's subordinate? Thinking back to the previous incident, Hongzhang seemed to want to join hands with Sherdang to snatch Wu Yan's map and Ningfan's map. Both Ningfan and Wu Yan were 100 Flower Emperor's subordinates. Hongzhang wanted to destroy their results in the illusory test. It seemed like he was targeting 100 Flower Emperor. If it wasn't because of an immortal emperor's instruction, Hongzhang would not dare to do so even if he had 10,000 guts. If it's really Buddha tier emperor, does it mean that Buddha tier emperor doesn't want to see 100 Flower Emperor's injuries recover perfectly? That's why he wanted to stop 100 Flower Emperor from obtaining the spring water of the South Sea. The grudges between the 5 emperors of the Middle State are really complicated. Ningfan sighed. Of course, the Middle State is not like the Three Flames or the Sacred Mountain. The cultivation resources here are limited. Since there are 5 immortal emperors at the same time, there will often be some disputes between them. In the dark, they often plot against each other. None of the 5 of them will be friends with each other. Alright, let's stop talking nonsense. Let's quickly eat the ancient Buddha Dao fruit. I will teach you the method to consume it now. Consuming the ancient Buddha Dao fruit requires an extremely solemn ceremony which includes fasting, bathing, burning incense and praying. Fasting and bathing are just a formality. However, burning incense is the key. It requires the fragrance of a special Buddha incense to seal the leakage of the medicinal power of the ancient Buddha Dao fruit. It is not just a formality. This is very important. If we don't do this, the medicinal power of the ancient Buddha Dao fruit will leak out, resulting in a great waste. Tu Huang gave Ningfan a simple explanation. Then he took out many items from his storage pouch and placed the incense table and sacrificial offerings on the spacious open space. After that, he burned the incense and lit the candles and prayed sincerely. It was Ningfan's first time seeing Tu Huang in such a pious manner. He put his palms together and closed his eyes slightly. Under his fringe and eyelashes was an incomparably calm and peaceful face. At this moment, Tu Huang's behavior and expression were like the most devout believer in the world. You too light an incense. After Tu Huang finished praying, he opened his eyes and said to Ningfan, "Didn't you already light an incense? It's still not enough to seal the leakage of the medicinal power of the ancient Buddha Dao fruit, right? It's enough. But since you've eaten the fruit left behind by the sacred ancestor, shouldn't you give him an incense to show your gratitude? Is the person you're praying to is the sacred ancestor of your great humble clan? Of course, the sacred ancestor left behind the ancient Buddha tree. This is the karmic cause. You and I ate the ancient Buddha fruit. This is the karmic effect. This incense is not only to seal the leakage of the medicinal power, but also to pay off the karmic cause. You're still young. You don't understand. The karmic cause of the sacred ancestor is not something you can simply get involved with. Of course, even if it's just out of respect for the sacred ancestor, I should still offer this incense. Ningfan naturally did not have any respect for the southern medicine saint. However, since Tu Huang mentioned the karmic cause of the sacred ancestor, Ningfan did not mind burning an incense. It was reasonable for him to eat the fruit of the sacred ancestor to pay back the incense. It was reasonable for cultivators to do so. After the ceremony, the two of them finally began to share the fruits. There were 6 Dao fruits, 3 for each of them. Tu Huang's spirit sense was already very strong in the first place. Thus, eating the ancient Buddha Dao fruit was naturally very easy for him. Very quickly, he absorbed the medicinal power. Ningfan, on the other hand, was different. The speed at which he absorbed the medicinal power was very slow. It was neither too fast nor too slow, as if he was savoring the taste and thinking about something at the same time. His spirit sense was not weak, but it was not too strong either. It could only be considered as an average standard among immortal venerables. Among the 4 types of bloodlines, the ancient devil clan was the worst at cultivating spirit sense. The Taitsong Jieling's aptitude in the Tao of spirit sense was also just average. Instead of saying that the clan cultivated spirit sense, it would be more appropriate to say that they cultivated tribulation sense. Unfortunately, Ningfan's two strongest bloodlines were the tribulation blood and the ancient devil blood. In that case, even with the superimposition of the four bloodlines, Ningfan's spirit sense could only be considered as average and not outstanding. Of course, this was the result of not using the power of the rain technique. If he uses the rain technique, the perception of Ningfan's spirit sense would instantly increase to an extremely terrifying level. However, that could only mean that the rain technique was powerful. It did not mean that Ningfan's spirit sense itself was strong. The improvement of the spirit sense above the immortal venerable realm did not only require an increase in the total amount of spirit sense, but also some kind of qualitative change. Ningfan did not know about this in the past. However, at this moment, after eating the ancient Buddha Tao fruit, he was surprised to find that while the total amount of his spirit sense increased, it also ushered in some kind of qualitative change. After all, eating 3 ancient Buddha Tao fruits in one go had actually brought great benefits to the cultivation of his spirit sense. Oh, this young man has already touched the bottleneck of the eternal forethought realm before attaining the immortal king realm. Tu Huang, who was standing at the side, revealed a slightly surprised look. The eternal forethought realm was a spirit sense realm that only experts above the immortal king realm had the chance to reach. Of course, it was just a chance. There were many people who could not even reach the first level of the forethought realm. This young man was able to touch the bottleneck of the first level of the forethought realm before attaining the immortal king realm. He really does have some capabilities. The eternal forethought realm referred to the 4 most profound levels of spirit sense. From the lowest to the highest level, they were the thought like a waterfall, thought like a stream, thought like a water dripping from the eaves, and thought like the clear sky. If one cultivates the thought like a waterfall, the spirit sense of an immortal king realm cultivator would directly increase by a few times like the gushing water of a waterfall. When one cultivates the thought like a stream, the control of a cultivator's spirit sense would rise to an unimaginable level. As for what kind of miraculous effect the last 2 levels would have, Tu Huang also had no idea. Up until now, she had yet to cultivate the thought like a water dripping from the eaves. To an immortal king, it was rare to find someone who could cultivate the thought like a waterfall. To an immortal emperor, those who could cultivate the thought like a waterfall to the second level were usually the kind of powerful immortal emperors who were almost invincible among those at the same level as them. Due to the difficulty of cultivating the forethought realm, Tu Huang was surprised that Ningfan had already touched the bottleneck of the forethought realm before attaining the immortal king realm. This was not a cultivation realm that could be achieved just by consuming 3 ancient Buddha Tao fruits. Definitely not. This young man's spirit sense might already be on the verge of a qualitative change. These 3 ancient Buddha Tao fruits should just be a catalyst. Tu Huang pondered inwardly and came to a conclusion. Her idea was correct. Ningfan cultivated 4 elements at the same time. His spirit sense was not only the fusion of the total amount of the 4 elements, but also the accumulation of the total amount to bring about a qualitative change. In the past, the total amount of the spirit sense of the 4 elements was not enough. However, at this moment, the qualitative change could not happen because the total amount of spirit sense of the 4 elements was insufficient. Thoughts like a waterfall. Ningfan's face was filled with slight pain. His sea of consciousness was constantly experiencing the pain of being shattered. His spirit sense was like a raging waterfall, surging crazily in his sea of consciousness. Before he consumed the ancient Buddha Tao fruit, his spirit sense was at the intermediate immortal venerable realm. The medicinal power of the 3 ancient Buddha Tao fruits had directly raised his spirit sense from the intermediate immortal venerable realm all the way to the limit of the immortal venerable realm. After reaching the limit, Ningfan's sea of consciousness showed signs of splitting and reforming. It was as if there was a pair of invisible hands tearing his sea of consciousness apart piece by piece and piecing them together again. The tearing process was naturally not painless. Moreover, because the sea of consciousness was the most sensitive part of a cultivator's body, any slight pain here would be magnified by hundreds or even thousands of times. Even with Ning Fan's strong will, he could not help but suck in a breath of cold air. However, the benefits of this tearing were also enormous. Ning Fan's spirit sense had already been raised to the limit of the immortal venerable realm. Now, however, every time his spirit sense was torn apart and reconstructed, this limit would increase a little. As the number of rips continued to accumulate, the limit of his sea of consciousness gradually rose to a terrifying level. Double. 3 times. 5 times. 10 times. Ning Fan's heart was filled with astonishment. According to his estimation, if his sea of consciousness is successfully reconstructed, his spirit sense would increase by more than 10 times from the limit of the immortal venerable realm. The spirit sense at the limit of the immortal venerable realm was already comparable to some weak immortal kings. If his spirit sense increases by 10 times from this limit, the strength of his spirit sense would definitely surpass most of the immortal kings in one go. Unfortunately, the reconstruction of his sea of consciousness failed when it was only halfway through. The limit of his sea of consciousness, which had been increasing continuously, shrank bit by bit after the reconstruction failed. Ning Fan opened his eyes with a hint of regret and let out a long breath of turbid qi. This was an opportunity for his spirit sense to increase by 10 times. However, it actually failed just like that. No matter how strong his will was, he still felt some negative emotions when he saw the opportunity that was within his grasp fly away. Fortunately, with his state of mind and cultivation, he easily dispelled these negative emotions. What a pity! Sure enough, it's still too early for you to attain the waterfall sense. Don't be discouraged. There will still be chances in the future to slowly break through. Even with my innate potential, I have failed more than 100 times to attain the waterfall sense. If you succeed in one go, I won't have the face to continue living anymore. Tu Huang comforted him with a tone as if he had already expected this. Thoughts like a waterfall? Ning Fan was slightly surprised. It was his first time hearing this term. Was it referring to the sea of consciousness that he had almost completed? You've never heard of the eternal forethought realm? Interesting, truly interesting. You've never even heard of the fourth reflection realm. But you're actually able to touch the bottleneck of the waterfall thought realm. You're really a freak. Tu Huang clicked his tongue and sighed. Which of those immortal kings who had cultivated Will Waterfall hadn't painstakingly prepared for many years in order to achieve this? Initially, Sovereign Tu thought that Ning Fan had been preparing for many years, and only then could he use the ancient Buddha Dao fruit as an opportunity to naturally induce a qualitative change in his spirit sense cultivation base. From the looks of it, this child did not seem to be prepared for the cultivation of the fourth thought realm. It would be a miracle if he could successfully break through like this. Did they really think breaking through to the fourth contemplation realm was child's play? Sovereign Tu briefly explained to Ning Fan about the eternal forethought realm. While listening, Ning Fan sighed with emotion. Thoughts are like a waterfall. It was a realm that the vast majority of immortal kings would never be able to reach. He hadn't become a celestial king yet, but he had already touched it. Could it be that this is the benefit of the yin-yang transformation? After all, according to his latest understanding, the essence of the yin-yang transformation could be summarized as millions of streams turning into an ocean. It was a type of absolute art that changed quantity to quality. This time the qualitative change came suddenly. However, it seemed to be closely related to the improvement of his comprehension of the yin-yang transformation. As he thought of this, Ning Fan could not help but ponder. On second thought, even those immortal kings who had been preparing for many years would usually fail many times before they could break through to this level of spirit sense. Since he had failed once or twice, he really shouldn't sigh in despair. There will be plenty of opportunities in the future. I'll break through when I'm fully prepared. His spirit sense was like a waterfall that was 10 times stronger than before. Putting aside the reason for the time being, since the opportunity for his spirit sense to undergo a qualitative change had already appeared, he would certainly seize the opportunity to truly achieve a breakthrough in his spirit sense after this matter is over. After calculating the time, Ning Fan had spent another half a day refining the ancient Buddha Dao fruit. Today it was already the 25th day since the illusory test began. There wasn't much time left. The two of them rested for a while in this place before setting off to the 6th floor. Ning Fan was still carrying Tu Huang on his back. Even though Ning Fan had failed to break through the waterfall of his spirit sense, it still improved the cultivation base of his spirit sense by a lot. From the mid-stage Immortal Venerable Realm to the peak Immortal Venerable Realm, it could be considered as an extremely terrifying improvement. The 6th floor was different from the 5th floor. There were no guards. However, there were a large number of illusion traps in every direction. Every flower and every blade of grass could be an illusion. A moment of carelessness would trigger the traps and change the scenery in front of them, causing them to fall into an illusion attack. It was also because of these illusion traps that Ning Fan could clearly feel the benefits of improving his spirit sense. Most of these illusion traps were at the level of the low-grade Supreme Profound Illusion technique. If his spirit sense did not improve, he could at most see through 30 to 40% of them. Now that his spirit sense had improved, he could already see through more than 90% of the illusion traps here. As for the remaining 10%, they were usually those illusion traps that had reached the mid-grade Supreme Profound Illusion technique. The mid-grade Great Profound Illusion technique was almost comparable to the techniques of ancient great cultivators. Moreover, because they were in the Fire Spirit Tower, even if the 5 emperors of the Middle Province were to come here, they would also find it difficult to completely see through the illusion, let alone Ning Fan. There are a total of 360 dangerous places on the 6th floor. Where are we going? Ning Fan asked while moving forward cautiously. We're not going anywhere. The good items on the 6th floor have already been taken away by the experts of the Holy Mountain countless years ago. Why would it be our turn to take them? Only the treasures of the first 5 floors are left for the participants to obtain. We only have one destination, and that is to go to the 6 Paths of Yellow Springs. The 6 Paths of Yellow Springs? Is there such a place marked on the map? Ning Fan asked in surprise. This place isn't marked on the map. In fact, it doesn't even exist in the knowledge of most of the experts of the Holy Mountain. Without a certain level of cultivation base, it's impossible to understand the existence of this place, just like how it's impossible to understand the existence of the 5 great supreme beings. What kind of place is that? It's a place that lies between reality and illusion. You're making it sound too mysterious. Forget it. What can I do for you? If it's something too dangerous, you won't help me? There are extremely great benefits in this place. Have you ever heard of a quasi-saint opening their eyes? Open my eyes. Miss, are you saying that the 6 Paths of Yellow Springs can actually help a quasi-saint open his eyes and improve his cultivation base? Ning Fan's expression immediately changed. He had heard about the legend of opening one's eyes from Taoist Musang. During the trip to the Wooden Island, even though he had guided the Origin Bridge, he did not manage to open his eyes in the end. Drip, drip, drip. The sound of water dripping and the gentle voice of that mysterious lady were still echoing in Ning Fan's ears. Little butterfly, stop sleeping. Wake up. Little butterfly, stop sleeping. Stop sleeping. If you continue sleeping, you won't be able to make it to the morning moon that appears once every 10 years in the ancient desolate mountain. If he had opened his eyes in the past, he might have been able to figure out what these things represented. Unfortunately, he could not do it. After all, it was too difficult to open his eyes. There were many quasi-saints who could not do it. As a resident of the Een world of the illusionary dream world and a persistent cultivator, it was countless times more difficult for Ning Fan to open his eyes. Thus, it was reasonable that he could not do it. In the end, this matter could only become one of the biggest doubts in his heart. Wait. Could it be that the doubts in his heart that Tu Huang mentioned are also something similar? Could it be that it can only be solved by opening his eyes? Ning Fan opened his mouth and wanted to ask about it. However, he then felt that it was inappropriate. Tu Huang was unwilling to talk about the doubts in his heart. It must be related to some secrets. Otherwise, he would have already explained it to him. Since Tu Huang was unwilling to talk about it, why should he ask about it? Oh, you have actually heard about the matter of opening your eyes. All right then. I don't need to explain more about it. This place is called the 6 Paths of Yellow Springs. According to Supreme Nyogue, it seems to be a part of the real 6 Paths of Yellow Springs. It's the boundary between life and death and illusion. When I made a deal with Supreme Niu Gui for the first time, I was brought there by him. He seems to be a frequent visitor of that place. In that place, there are 6 ancient mountains floating above the Yellow Springs. It is said that all of them were left behind by ancient people who had attained the Tao. Speaking of which, I have to remind you that one of the ancient mountains is very dangerous. It's because there is a line of incomparably terrifying words on that ancient mountain. There is no you in the 6 paths of Yellow Springs. It's just 6 words, but its aura force is everlasting and has been passed down to the present day. Obviously, the person who left those words is not an ordinary person. I'm afraid that he is a cultivator at the 3rd step. You must not go within 1,000 zhang of that ancient mountain. Otherwise, you will die. As soon as Ning Fan heard the words "there is no you in the 6 paths of Yellow Springs," his expression turned slightly sluggish. There is no you in the 6 paths of Yellow Springs. There is no you in the 6 paths of Yellow Springs. For some reason, Ning Fan could hear the sadness, bitterness and despair in his heart when he heard those words that sounded ordinary and ordinary. On the other hand, Ning Fan almost ignored Tu Huang's reminder after that. Thus, Tu Huang reminded him again. Only when he saw that Ning Fan really remembered the warning did he feel slightly relieved. She did not want her companion to be killed by the ancient words as soon as he goes to the 6 paths of Yellow Springs. The reason why the 6 paths of Yellow Springs can help quasi-saint realm cultivators to open their eyes is because that place has extreme yang. The yin qi there is extremely terrifying. It has almost reached the limit of what the extreme pill saint region can endure. Thus, when the extreme yin is converted, a small amount of extreme yang is produced. However, don't think that you can obtain too much extreme yang from that place. Most of the extreme yang has already been taken away by the 5 great supreme beings. After all, extreme yang is an important material for quasi-saints to open their eyes. As for you, you can only find some scraps at most. Moreover, whether you can successfully obtain it or not still depends on your ability. As for me, I didn't come here for the extreme yang. Instead, I want you to help me enter the end of the illusion. Ning Fan's forehead was filled with black lines. The end of the illusion. Isn't this description a little too poetic? No. This is not a metaphor. It's a description. That place is really the end of all illusions. You will know when you go there. Of course, if you also have doubts in your heart, you might be able to see the truth behind the illusion and find the answer. The power of the 6 paths of Yellow Springs can deduce everything from the past to the present. As he said that, Tu Huang took a deep breath and clenched his fists. His fingernails dug into his palms, causing a heart-wrenching pain. Her delicate body trembled slightly, as if she was afraid. What she was afraid of was the answer that was just within her reach. You can withstand the power of the 5-finger illusion. Your cultivation base has yet to exceed the limit of the 6 paths of Yellow Springs. If it's you, you will certainly be able to enter the depths of the Yellow Springs and help me find the answer. Ning Fan, please lend me a hand. Chapter 1046. You've given me quite a lot of benefits along the way. Of course, I will try my best. Ning Fan answered. No. Those benefits are actually nothing. They can only be considered as part of the reward for the transaction between us. You helped me enter the 6 paths of Yellow Spring. The risk is not small. Therefore, I will give you another great gift as a token of my gratitude regardless of the outcome. When this matter is over, I will give this item to you. Tu Huang opened his mouth slightly and spat out the heavily sealed secret treasure containing the saint's will. Upon hearing his words, Ning Fan's expression changed. This secret treasure was sealed in secret. Even though Ning Fan had yet to figure out the true appearance of this item, he knew that its origin was not ordinary. How could a secret treasure that could emit the power of the saints will be ordinary? Since Tu Huang valued this item so much and sealed it in secret, it must have other abilities that could be displayed. Of course, even if this secret treasure only had the effect of emitting the saint's will, it was already enough to tempt Ning Fan. Along the way, he had used the aura force of the saint's will to refine the medicinal power of the saint. It had saved him a lot of time. If he can really obtain this treasure, it would certainly be a great help to his cultivation. I'm afraid the value of this treasure is enough to tempt a first-level quasi-saint, right? Ning Fan asked after a moment of silence. Indeed. I had paid a huge price to exchange this treasure from Supreme Being Niu Gui. I won't hide it from you. This treasure is actually a half-damaged innate magic treasure. There's almost no possibility of repairing it. Even though it contains an enormous saint's will, it can't be used limitlessly. It can only be used as little as possible. When the saint's will is exhausted, this treasure will be considered as useless. The true use of this treasure isn't to release the saint's will and speed up the process of refining the medicinal power. Instead, it's to turn back time. Turn back time? What does that mean? Ning Fan's expression changed slightly and asked. Could it be what he had guessed? It literally means, if this treasure is in perfect condition, and you have the cultivation base of the third step, this treasure can turn back the time of an entire world. It can actually turn back time. This is impossible. Ihi. Why is it impossible? Do you know what the power of the third step is? The power of samsara? Ning Fan thought for a while and asked. How much do you know about samsara? Next to nothing. I've seen the true world in my dreams before. In fact, I've personally visited the sage's Bodhimanda more than once and listened to the Tao lectures of a real sage. The one that left the deepest impression on me was the ancient moon sage of the static sect. This sage once told his disciple that reincarnation was like a book. If the book was flipped forward, the characters in the book would walk towards the future. If the book was flipped backward, they would return to the past. The characters in the book thought that they were walking from the past to the future. They thought that the flow of time was the change of seasons. Time is still, but this stillness cannot be seen by the person in the book. Only the person flipping through the book knows. Reincarnation was like a book. Time stood still. However, this stillness could not be seen by the person in the book. Only the person flipping through the book knew. All of a sudden, Ning Fan felt enlightened. It was as if he had understood thousands of wondrous truths from this sentence, but at the same time, he felt like he had understood nothing at all. What was even more unbelievable to him was that he was able to hear such a profound comprehension of reincarnation from Tu Huang. Even a quasi-saint might not be able to comprehend such a profound comprehension, but Tu Huang knew. Listening to the Tao teachings of a saint in his dream, such an opportunity was really something that others could never imagine. Theoretically, if this treasure is completely repaired and used by a saint, it can reverse the time of an entire great kiliacosm. What is the concept of an entire great kiliacosm? The 4 heavens and 9 worlds, the heavenly demon world, the ancient devil's abyss and the supreme pill sacred region of our people are actually just a part of the great kiliacosm. When this treasure is fully activated, it can reverse the time of all the planes mentioned above. However, this is only possible in theory. Even Supreme Being Niu Gui could not repair this treasure. It's hard to say if there are still people in this world who can repair this treasure. Besides, even if this treasure has a cultivation base, you won't have the cultivation base of a saint. Naturally, it's impossible for you to reverse the time of an entire great kiliacosm. Even in its half-damaged state, this treasure can still reverse the time of an extremely small area. When we arrive at the 6 paths of Yellow Springs, I will unseal this treasure and pass it to you. When you enter the 6 paths of Yellow Springs with this treasure, you will have a greater chance of survival. If you are unfortunate enough to die, this treasure will help you go back to the time before you died. Ning Fan was truly shocked by the heaven-defying level of this treasure. In its perfect state, it can reverse the time of an entire great kiliacosm. Even in its half-damaged state, this treasure can still allow the dead to go back to the time before they died. Such a heaven-defying magic treasure is actually just at the innate grade and not a heaven-opening grade treasure. Or perhaps, in the eyes of those saints, reversing time is not something unbelievable. A magic treasure with this level of power is not enough to be classified as a heaven-opening grade treasure. On the 27th day, Ning Fan and Tu Huang arrived at a vast plain. This plain was filled with dandelions. As Ning Fan stepped into this place, there was a sudden gust of wind on the prairie. Then, tens of thousands of dandelions flew up with the wind. In a blink of an eye, they covered the sky, their vision and everything. If it was any other time, Ning Fan only needed to blow a breath, and it would turn into a strong gust of wind that could easily blow away these dandelions that filled the sky. However, at this moment, he discovered to his surprise that his body could not move at all because of the dandelions that covered the sky. Is it an illusion technique again? Currently, ordinary low-grade profound illusion techniques could no longer trap him at all. Even though he could not break free from a mid-grade profound illusion technique, he could still see some clues about it. However, the illusion technique of the dandelions in front of him could not be seen through at all. In that case, it was highly likely that this technique was one of the best mid-grade profound illusion techniques. It might even have reached the level of a high-grade profound illusion technique. Wake up! A delicate voice directly woke Ning Fan up from the illusion technique. Then, the white dandelions that filled the sky disappeared like a tornado. It was Tu Huang who broke the illusion technique from the side and woke Ning Fan up. Thank you. I didn't expect there to be such a high-level illusion technique here. I was a little careless. Ning Fan thanked her. It's my fault for making things difficult for you. The illusion technique in this place should have almost reached the level of a high-grade supreme profound illusion technique. To you it's still too strong. Even if it's an ordinary immortal emperor who comes to this place, they would also find it hard to resist such an illusion technique. Tu Huang said indifferently. Then he asked Ning Fan to put her down. Are we not going to continue moving forward? Ning Fan asked. We're already here. The 6 paths of Yellow Springs are right above this plain. In the sky? Ning Fan was slightly stunned. He raised his head and looked at the sky. What he saw was a sea of white clouds. There was only one place where the clouds were covered with oily yellow ice crystals. The airflow there also seemed to be colder than other places. There seemed to be an entrance to some kind of secret place hidden on that piece of cloud. After Tu Huang's reminder, Ning Fan could vaguely see it. Could that piece of cloud that was a little special be the entrance to the 6 paths of Yellow Springs? It was a little different from the 6 paths of Yellow Springs in Ning Fan's imagination. Many books had mentioned the 6 paths of Yellow Springs. The ancient records of Buddhism, in particular, had the most descriptions about it. Buddhism was particular about karma and retribution, the past life and the present life. In the Buddhist scriptures, the 6 paths of Yellow Springs were a part of the 6 paths of samsara. According to legends, after a person dies, his or her soul would enter the Yellow Springs and be reincarnated there. The place he or she would be reincarnated in his or her next life was greatly related to the merits and virtues of his or her previous life. However, Ning Fan had never seen reincarnation with his own eyes ever since he started cultivating the Tao. Thus he had always been skeptical about the existence of the Hell of Yama and the 6 paths of samsara in the Buddhist scriptures. Of course, no matter which ancient record it was, the 6 paths of Yellow Springs were all described in the extreme hell underground. There seemed to be no ancient record that would describe the 6 paths of Yellow Springs in the sky. That piece of cloud is too high. The power of the illusion bead has been exhausted. I can't recover my cultivation base and thus, I can't resist the restrictive power of this place to fly to such a high place. How are we going to get up there? Ning Fan frowned. He could not fly. If he were to jump, under the suppression of the restrictive power, he could only jump 100 zhang high no matter how strong he was. It was impossible for him to reach the height of the clouds. Wait. When night falls, we will find a way to fly up there. Tu Huang answered. After that, he stretched his body and directly lay on the green grass in an extremely comfortable posture. He fell asleep. So I can only wait for the sky to turn dark. Ning Fan was not familiar with the environment of the 6th floor. Since Tu Huang dared to lie on the grass and sleep because of his cultivation base, Ning Fan would not dare to do so. He did not forget Tu Huang's warning. If he is distracted for even a moment, he might be killed by some illusion technique. Even though he was waiting right now, he still kept his guard up and did not dare to relax for even a moment. The sky gradually turned dark. There was no moon or stars in this place. This night was darker than any other night in the world. Moreover, the night itself was a type of illusion technique that was not a low-grade one. Fortunately, Ning Fan had already cultivated a similar night illusion technique. Thus he was naturally not afraid of this illusion. However, in this dark environment where he could not even see his own fingers, He could not help but worry about a certain woman who was sleeping soundly beside him. There was not a single trace of light. Even if there was light, it would be devoured by the darkness of this place. Ningfan could not sense anything with his naked eyes or spirit sense in this darkness. He could only rely on his ears to confirm Tu Huang's condition. During the first half of the night, Tu Huang's breathing was very steady. At a certain moment during the second half of the night, Tu Huang's breathing suddenly disappeared. Then in the darkness, there was the sound of wild beasts tearing apart raw meat. Ningfan's first reaction was to wonder if something had happened to Tu Huang. He immediately frowned. In the darkness, he walked towards the place where Tu Huang was sleeping based on his memory. He reached out his hand and touched the grass. Luckily, Tu Huang was still there. He had not been eaten by some unknown wild beast. Ningfan could only blame himself for not being familiar with this sixth floor. That was why he was worried that Tu Huang, who did not have any cultivation base, would be eaten by some wild beast when he heard the sound of wild beasts eating meat. "Take your hand away." Tu Huang's slightly embarrassed and angry voice resounded in the darkness. After hearing Tu Huang's words, Ningfan finally realized that his hand seemed to have grabbed a certain extremely plump and soft part of Tu Huang's body. When he moved his fingers, he found that it was very elastic. Previously, Ningfan was worried about Tu Huang's safety. Thus, he did not notice which part of Tu Huang he had touched. Now that his worries were gone, he noticed that the part that he was grabbing was extremely plump and soft. Moreover, it had an attractive elasticity. It seems like I accidentally touched his chest. However, he did not expect that this Tu Huang, who looked thin and slender on the surface, would actually be so well endowed. 3 breaths. If you don't take your hand away, I will chop off your hand and feed it to the dogs. Tu Huang's tone was filled with extremely terrifying killing intent. He did not seem to be joking at all. Only then did Ningfan retract his hand. He shook his head and smiled helplessly. He was too lazy to explain any further and just asked, "What is that sound?" What he asked was naturally the sound of wild beasts eating raw meat. "It's the sound of a heavenly dog eating meat," Tu Huang answered with a cold tone. Because Ningfan had attacked her chest, her good mood was completely ruined. Heavenly dog. Ningfan could not help but be stunned. The heavenly dog seemed to be a kind of demon beast that only existed in ancient books and legends. Could it be that such a creature still exists in the current cultivation world? In ancient times, there was the Een Mountain where the turbid water came from and flowed south to the Fan Lake. Among them, there was a beast that looked like a raccoon with a white head. It was called the Heavenly Dog. Just as these ancient characters resounded in Ningfan's mind, in the darkness in front of him, 2 rays of eyes that were as fierce as lightning suddenly swept across him. The surrounding darkness was instantly dispersed by the gaze of that beast. It was a strange beast that was as large as a buffalo. Judging from its appearance, it looked like a gigantic lynx. The fur on its body was gray. Only the fur on its head was snow white. On the glabella of the beast, there was a crack. Even though the size of the beast was not huge, its abilities were not weak. At least, Ningfan knew that he would not be able to dispel the dark illusion technique of this place. However, this beast actually destroyed the surrounding dark illusion technique with just a glare, causing the surroundings to brighten up a little. It must be the heavenly dog demon beast that Tu Huang mentioned. With the help of the light, Ningfan realized that Tu Huang was no longer sleeping on the ground. Instead, he was half squatting on the ground, feeding the heavenly dog meat. Moreover, it did not seem to be the meat of birds or beasts. Instead, it was human meat. Where did this human meat come from? Ningfan asked with a frown. The heavenly dog is a living being that lives near the yellow spring of the 6 paths. It leaves the yellow spring at night and comes to the outside world to hunt for food. It won't eat anything other than human meat. If it eats human meat, it must be the meat of an immortal emperor. Tu Huang said while feeding the heavenly dog. Only then did Ningfan notice that Tu Huang's qi was a little weak. His face was also a little pale, and there seemed to be bloodstains on his dress. Did you feed it with your own meat? Ningfan's frown deepened. What else? Why else would I feed it with your meat? It might not necessarily like your meat. After eating and drinking its fill, The heavenly dog will fly back to the yellow spring of the 6 paths. After eating my meat, it has already agreed to fly back to the yellow spring of the 6 paths, Tu Huang said angrily. Obviously, he was still bothered by the fact that Ning Fan had attacked his chest. Is the wound serious? Ning Fan frowned and looked at Tu Huang's chest. Tu Huang's ears immediately turned red and he asked coldly, "What are you looking at? It's not like I cut off the meat here to feed it. The wound isn't here. It's on my thigh. Do you need me to treat it for you?" Ning Fan looked at the area between Tu Huang's thighs with a strange expression. "No need. I have already consumed the blood replenishment pill. My flesh will recover very soon. Alright, this fellow is almost done eating. Let's quickly ride on its back and fly to the yellow spring of the 6 paths together with it." As soon as he finished speaking, Tu Huang gritted his teeth. He wanted to climb onto the back of the heavenly dog, but he could not get up no matter how hard he tried. Moreover, every time he lifted his leg, he would feel a tearing pain coming from his left leg. After all, a large piece of flesh had just been cut off. How could it not hurt? Ning Fan remained silent for a while. Then he directly carried Tu Huang onto the back of the heavenly dog and rode on it. Tu Huang was in front while Ning Fan was behind him. After the heavenly dog finished eating the meat, it let out a satisfying burp that was as loud as thunder. Then, it shook its head to shake off the lice on its head. All of a sudden, it leaped into the sky, treating the forbidden power of this place as child's play. "Hold me tight. No matter what happens, don't look back." Tu Huang reminded Ning Fan with a cold expression. This hug was obviously not for the sake of romance. Instead, it was for the sake of Ning Fan's safety. Once they enter the yellow spring of the 6 paths, they would be attacked by the real high-grade profound illusion technique. Only by holding her tightly would Ning Fan have a chance to survive. Ning Fan nodded. His left hand grabbed the mane on the heavenly dog's back while his right hand held Tu Huang's waist. Tu Huang's delicate body trembled slightly. However, his expression remained calm and he did not say anything. However, this calmness did not last for long before it turned into embarrassment and anger again. It was because Ning Fan's right hand had moved down from her waist all the way to the area between her legs. Just as she was about to teach Ning Fan a lesson for teasing her, Ning Fan's hand stopped before it reached the crucial spot. Instead, he activated the star technique at the wound on her left leg. He was actually healing her. The anger in Tu Huang's heart was instantly suppressed. The missing flesh and blood quickly grew back from the wound, and it was as good as new. After doing all of this, Ning Fan obediently moved his hand back to her waist. His expression was clear and bright. Of course, he would not have any intention of teasing her. Beautiful women and white skeletons. As Ning Fan had experienced too many things between men and women, he had long become indifferent to such things. Of course, he would not have any unnecessary desires. Besides, he knew very well that the yellow spring of the 6 paths was not a good place. It was probably even more dangerous than the outside world. Thus, he could not afford to be distracted at all. Naturally, he would not choose to take advantage of Tu Huang at such a critical moment. The heavenly hound flew up to the clouds and crashed into that strange cloud. The wind pressure blew against Ning Fan's face. Then, Ning Fan only felt a blinding light in front of his eyes. It was so bright that he could not open his eyes. He had already entered another world from one place. After the blinding light faded, Ning Fan finally saw the scenery in front of him clearly. It was very different from the outside world. The sky was filled with cracks and wounds. The ground was an ocean formed by the rolling yellow springs. In the severely cracked sky, there was also an oily yellow icy cloud. It was the passage that connected this world to the outside world. There was no wind or waves on the sea. It was strangely silent. The air was extremely cold. Even the water vapor that one breathes out would turn into ice crystals in an instant. There was no land on the sea. There were only 6 ancient mountains floating in the sky. They did not have the immortal mist of ordinary immortal mountains. These 6 ancient mountains also gave people a feeling of lifelessness. Among them, there was even an ancient mountain that emitted blood-red light. It gave people a feeling of great danger. Even Ning Fan felt his heart palpitate just by taking a glance at that ancient mountain. Tu Huang had once said that there was an extremely dangerous ancient mountain in the yellow spring of the Six Paths. Could it be that he was referring to that mountain? While Ning Fan was deep in thought, the voices of two young girls suddenly resounded in the sky behind him. Aliang, quickly look. Why is there such a strange big dog flying in the sky? Look, there are two people on the dog's back. Where? Let me see. Aya. This time little sister Ji, he didn't lie to me. It's actually true. What a huge dog. It actually came to our 6 paths of reincarnation. However, why did you say that there are two people on the dog's back? I can clearly only see one. Strange. I thought there were two people just now. But now, there is only one. Ning Fan's heart immediately skipped a beat. He was extremely familiar with the voices of the two young girls behind him. One of them was Mu Weiliang's true body while the other one was Ji He's. Instinctively, his body wanted to turn around to see why the two of them appeared at this place. However, Ning Fan quickly calmed himself down. He remembered Tu Huang's advice. In the end, he did not turn around to look at the source of the voices. He could vaguely feel that there was an extremely powerful illusion power behind him. It was far beyond what he could resist with his current strength. Once he turns around, what awaits him would probably be death. Ning Fan did not turn around. The voices behind him also calmed down very quickly. However, not long after that, a stern shout that sounded like an old man suddenly resounded from behind him. As soon as the roar echoed, Ning Fan could not help but cough out a mouthful of blood. He felt a sharp pain in his chest. He was severely injured. These injuries were not only caused by the roar. Most of them seemed to be the injuries that Ning Fan already had. With such heavy injuries, Ning Fan actually found it hard to sit steadily on the back of the heavenly dog. His body involuntarily leaned forward and was about to crash into Tu Huang's back. However, he crashed into nothing. Ning Fan raised his head abruptly. To his utter shock, he discovered that Tu Huang, who was sitting in front of him, had disappeared for some unknown reason. As for the heavenly dog that he was riding on, it was much larger than the previous one. Its chi was also much stronger than the previous one. If the previous heavenly dog only had the cultivation base of the broken sense realm, then the cultivation base of this heavenly dog would be 100,000 times, or even 1,000,000 times stronger than the previous one. It was a heavenly dog with a cultivation base of the 3rd step. What's going on? Tu Huang disappeared. The heavenly dog is different too. Could it be that I'm still under an illusion technique? And I Fan, how dare you? The 3 great true worlds are chasing after you, and yet you still dare to come to my 6 paths of samsara to seek your own death. Do you really think that my ancient sacred sect is weak and can be bullied? Humph. Today, I will make sure that you won't be able to leave this place alive. The figure of the elderly man who was chasing after the heavenly dog suddenly let out a roar. The entire heaven and earth suddenly shrunk and began to squirm like a living creature. Chapter 1047. Sure enough, I'm still under the illusion technique. Ning Fan suddenly raised his head and looked at the sky. At this moment, the sky was no longer as fragmented as before. Instead, it was completely intact. The sky was no longer the same as before. The color of the sky was not blue but red. It was the color of flesh and blood. At this moment, when the sky shrank and wriggled, it looked like an animal's esophagus. It was extremely strange. Due to the wriggling of the sky, a large amount of acidic fog rushed madly towards Ning Fan from all directions. Ning Fan did not know what kind of ability this acidic fog was, but he could sense a fatal danger from it. It was too strong. Even a quasi-sage who came into contact with a trace of it would directly dissolve into a pool of blood. This technique was definitely not something he could resist. He would die. Xuelingzi, you are just a mere origin sage of the 3 eras. You don't have the right to make my master attack you. Get lost. Without waiting for Ning Fan to use any defensive measures, the heavenly hound of the 3rd step that he was riding already spoke in a human voice. Then, it opened its mouth and swallowed the acidic fog that filled the sky. The interior of this heavenly hound's mouth was dark and deep. There were even stars flickering in it, as if there was a starry sky hidden in its mouth. With a single gulp, It easily swallowed all the acidic fog in the sky. The old man who was chasing after Ningfan was instantly enraged. After a few flashes, he caught up with the hound and finally blocked its path, stopping it from moving forward. That old man was surrounded by a blood-red light which condensed into a gigantic blood-red ring behind him. It released a monstrous aura force. Ningfan's eyes turned cold. With his current cultivation base, he could not see the old man's appearance through the blood-red light. However, he could still recognize the blood-red ring behind the old man. It was the Origin Sage Ring. It was different from the Origin Sage Ring that Sunluo used in the past. This old man's Origin Sage Ring gave Ningfan an invincible feeling. It was as if he could kill all living beings below the third step, as long as he activated the power of this Origin Sage Ring. Humph. I was wondering who it was. So it's Crow Heavenly Hound from the immemorial Een Mountain. No wonder you could pass through the Een River without making a sound, and ambush this place. I didn't expect that you who always thought highly of yourself would actually recognize someone as your master, and allow others to ride you. And its master was a criminal that the three great true worlds were searching for together. Do you want to go back on your previous master's agreement with my sacred Kuran sect, and become enemies with my sacred Kuan sect? Cut the crap. What kind of agreement that old fogey made with the Chaos Kuan sacred sect is none of my business. All I know is that if it wasn't for my master, Ningfan, your Kuan Saint sect would have already captured me to refine the karma plate. Since you are so heartless, don't blame me, Crow Tiango, for being unjust. Today, no matter what, I'm going to cause a huge ruckus in your holy Kuan sect's territory. I'll eat up all your disciples. Bastard, you're courting death. You're fucking courting death. Just as the heavenly hound of the third step below him was about to engage in a battle with that saint, Ningfan's vision suddenly turned black. Then all the scenes in front of him shattered and disappeared. A gust of cold wind blew past. Ningfan quivered and woke up, breaking free from the illusion. At this moment he was no longer in the illusion, nor was he on the back of the heavenly hound. Instead, he was sitting on a huge ship, floating in the Yellow Springs Sea. He was sitting on a sampan. Beside him, Tu Huang was using his divine ability with a solemn expression, trying his best to save him from the illusion. Hee. Kid, you're really lucky. I actually managed to save you. As soon as his voice fell, Tu Huang coughed out a mouthful of blood. His qi had already become extremely weak. Clearly, he was severely injured because he forcefully used his cultivation base. I'm under the illusion. You forcefully used your cultivation base to save me? Ningfan slowly stood up and stared at Tu Huang with a complicated expression. That illusion just now came without a sound. If Tu Huang didn't save him, he definitely would not have been able to escape from that illusion. With his insignificant cultivation base, he would most likely die in the illusion if he encountered the saint in the illusion. He owed Tu Huang a life. Tu Huang's qi was so weak that he did not even bother to speak. He just nodded his head as an answer. You seem to be heavily injured. I'm sorry. It's all because of me. Ningfan sighed. I need you. That's why I risked my life to save you. This is part of our deal. So you don't have to feel guilty. Come here and help me suppress my injuries. All right. During this trip to the Fire Spirit Tower, Tu Huang was not supposed to use his cultivation base recklessly due to certain reasons. However, in order to save Ningfan from the illusion, he used all of his strength. It caused him an extremely serious backlash, which even damaged his foundation. What was more troublesome was that he was affected by the illusion. This injury was the most terrifying one. The damage it caused was just a little bit away from taking Tu Huang's life. At this moment, she no longer had the extra strength to heal herself. The moment Ningfan regained consciousness, she resealed all of her cultivation base. As for healing her injuries, she needed Ningfan's help. This time, she did not care too much about the difference between her and Ningfan. Instead, she directly took off her clothes and presented herself in front of Ningfan. Unfortunately, there was no sense of beauty in her appearance this time. Her entire body was actually filled with hideous and terrifying injuries. Ningfan slightly sucked in a cold breath. The severity of Tu Huang's injuries had far exceeded his imagination. It was also beyond the healing range of his current healing technique. Those terrifying injuries were not only caused by the backlash of using his cultivation base recklessly. There were also large patches of flesh and blood, which were directly erased by some kind of terrifying divine ability, revealing the white bones underneath the flesh and blood. Ning Fan could even see Tu Huang's internal organs from his back. These injuries can't possibly be caused by the backlash, Ning Fan said solemnly. Of course not. I'm really curious. What exactly did you see in the illusion? I just wanted to give you a hand, but I was actually injured by the great divine ability of the Saint Realm in the illusion. Almost half of my flesh and blood was corroded. What exactly did you see? Tu Huang asked with great interest. His calm expression made it seem like his body, which was full of holes, was not his. The content of the illusion in the 6 paths of Yellow Spring varies from person to person. Because the 6 paths of Yellow Spring has the divine ability to deduce the past, present and future, the illusion in this place usually shows the past, present and future of a cultivator. According to the content, the power of the illusion will also be slightly different. However, most of them won't be too different from each other. The last time I came to the 6 paths of Yellow Spring, the illusion I saw was when I was besieged by a group of immortal king bee demons. There were hundreds and thousands of them. Even with my cultivation base at the half-step immortal emperor realm at that time, I almost died in the illusion. I had no choice but to run away. As for you, the divine ability of a saint actually appeared in the illusion. Could it be that such a terrifying thing happened in your past or future? Tu Huang found it hard to imagine what Ning Fan had seen to cause him to suffer such serious injuries. I saw Crow Tengu and Xuelingzi. They were both at the 3rd step, and they were fighting. I heard Xuelingzi's roar and the conversation between them. I also heard the voices of my 2 wives. Ning Fan recalled the contents of the illusion bit by bit, and explained them to Tu Huang. As for himself, he was also pondering about the strangeness of the illusion. Does this illusion really have some kind of relationship with the past and future of the person who is affected by it? Jihe and Wei Liang were indeed related to him. It was also understandable that their voices appeared in the illusion. However, Crow Tengu and Xuelingzi, what is the connection between the battle between saints and my past and future? I can't figure it out. My past should have been a butterfly in every life. Only in this life did I enter the mortal Tao. It was hard to imagine that I, who had no cultivation base in my previous life as a butterfly, would have something to do with saints. Or perhaps, the scene I saw in the illusion was not related to my past as a butterfly but to my future? There's also Ning Fan. It was definitely not the first time Ning Fan heard this name. He once obtained a gigantic stone in the ancient desolate domain. There were 2 ancient demon characters on the stone, and they were the words Ning Fan. Moreover, during the battle when he first obtained the void-piercing stone, a demonic shadow of a black fog floated out from the stone, and called itself Ning Fan. After that, he obtained the gigantic stone and comprehended the ancient demon clan's greatest divine ability, the returning ruin's finger. However, what left the deepest impression on Ning Fan was far from that. Instead, it was the strange feeling he had when he touched the 2 words Ning Fan on the stone. It was an indescribable feeling. It was as if the past and the future were looking at each other. It was a feeling of being in a trance, as if time and space were intertwined. Before this, Ning Fan thought that this strange feeling was just an illusion. However, when he thought about the profundity of the 6 paths of Yellow Spring illusion technique, he realized that his relationship with Ning Fan was definitely not simple. The 6 paths of Yellow Spring can deduce the past, present, and future. In other words, the people you see either intersect with your past or intersect with your future. Speaking of which, I've heard of one of the 2 saints you described in my dream. I have heard of Crow Tengu. He seems to be the guardian beast of the Een Mountain on behalf of a great force in the true world. Oh, you have dreamt of them before? Then have you ever dreamt of the name Xuelingzi? Xuelingzi. I have never dreamt of him before. However, there are so many saints in the true world. The range of my dream isn't particularly large. It's not strange that I don't know about this saint. Then, have you ever heard of the name Ning Fan? According to the conversation in the illusion technique, this person seems to be a sinner who is being hunted down by the 3 great true worlds. Ning Fan? Which two words are they? An as in rebellious and fan as in confinement. This name has never appeared in my dream before. Ning Fan fell silent. No one knew what he was thinking about. As time passed, Ning Fan finally managed to temporarily suppress Emperor Tu's injuries. At least on the surface, Emperor Tu's flesh and blood had been restored to its original fair and smooth appearance. Of course, his qi was still very weak. It was obvious that his internal injuries were severe and his foundation was damaged. Ning Fan saw the battle between the saints in the illusion technique. Emperor Tu, who tried to save him, was affected by the waves of energy from the battle. However, it was just an illusion technique at the end of the day. It was impossible for it to imitate the waves of energy from the Battle of Saints. Otherwise, even if Emperor Tu fully activates his cultivation base, it would be impossible for him to survive. If his injuries were really caused by the saints, it would be impossible for Ning Fan to heal them with his current strength. After treating his injuries, Emperor Tu took out a clean set of clothes and put them on neatly. During the whole process, she no longer bothered to avoid Ning Fan. In fact, after she was fully dressed, she even teased Ning Fan and asked him, "Does my body look good?" Ning Fan decisively did not answer that boring question. Instead, he observed his surroundings. The moment he woke up from the illusion technique, he was busy treating Emperor Tuesday. Only now did he have the time to observe his surroundings. The heavenly dog that carried him into this place had long since disappeared. On the boundless sea, there was not a single trace of it. This ship seemed to be taken out by Emperor Tuesday. Without it, he and Emperor Tu would not have any foothold in this boundless sea. Even though he could gain a foothold on the 6 ancient mountains floating on the sea, his rationality told him that it was better for him not to get close to those places. Especially, not to get close to the easternmost mountain. Ning Fan's eyesight was extremely strong. Even though he was dozens of li away, he could still see the gigantic words on the mountain. "You are not in the 6 paths of reincarnation." Those words were actually written in the ancient demon language. Besides, this handwriting, the qi between the lines, Ning Fan felt that it was somewhat familiar. It actually seemed to be somewhat similar to the 2 words "An Fan" on the void-piercing stone. The words that he heard in the illusion technique echoed in his ears involuntarily. "An Fan, how dare you? The 3 great true worlds are hunting you down. How dare you come to my 6 paths of reincarnation to seek your own death? Do you really think that my ancient sacred sect is weak and can be bullied? Humph. Today, I will make sure that you will never return." Cut the crap. What kind of agreement that old man made with the Chaos Koan sacred sect is none of my business. I only know that if it wasn't for my master, An Fan, your Chaos Koan sacred sect would have already captured me to refine the karma plate. An Fan. It was An Fan. There were traces of An Fan in the 6 paths of Yellow Spring. He had been here before and left behind some words here. Could it be that An Fan had once forcefully entered the 6 paths of reincarnation? Could it be that after forcefully entering the 6 paths of Yellow Spring, An Fan left behind these words on the stone beside the ancient mountain? There is no you in the 6 paths of Yellow Spring. There is no you in the 6 paths of Yellow Spring. Did An Fan come to the 6 paths of Yellow Spring to look for someone? Who is he looking for? Ning Fan felt that when he looked at the words on the ancient mountain, he had the feeling that time and space were intertwined again. At this moment, it was the first time he was at a loss about the 2 words An Fan. At this moment, it was the first time he could not see clearly what was the past and what was the future. He had thousands of guesses about An Fan in his heart. However, in the end, he just remained silent in the face of the ancient mountain's words. He did not say anything. It was even more impossible for him to run over and examine the ancient mountain's words at a close distance. It was very dangerous. Extremely dangerous. On the surface, the aura of these words was very similar to that of the 2 words An Fan in the past. It seemed to be carved by the same person. However, the emotions contained in them were completely different. The 2 words An Fan in the past gave Ning Fan a very calm feeling. However, these 6 words gave Ning Fan an overwhelming sense of killing intent and madness. Up to the heavens and down to the Yellow Spring. All the 9 heavens and 10 earths will be killed. Ning Fan could feel the crazy killing intent from these words. If he ran to the vicinity of this ancient mountain, there would only be one outcome, and that was to be killed by the monstrous killing intent of the ancient mountain's words. The aura force of these 6 words was 100 times, or even 1,000 times stronger than the stone tablet left behind by the herb-gathering saint in the Great Bay clan. The murderous intent was even more dangerous than the previous one. If the person who carved these words was really an I Fan, how strong was this an I Fan? Was he 100 or 1,000 times stronger than the herb-gathering saint? There's not much time left. We should get down to business. During this period of time, I will be waiting for you on the ship. As for you, you need to dive into this Yellow Spring Sea and go to the bottom of the sea to find an answer for me. How do you want to find it? I will lend you one of my eyes. Take it with you and dive to the bottom of the sea. It will guide you in the right direction. Of course, if you don't have this treasure, you will definitely die if you dive into the depths of the Yellow Spring. Therefore, I will unseal this treasure and set the reverse time of this treasure to the moment before you jump into the Yellow Spring. If you die in the depths of the Yellow Spring, this treasure will reverse the time and bring you back to the time before you die. The Butcher Sovereign opened his mouth and spat out a ray of light. Then, the seals on the item were unsealed one by one. The true appearance of this item finally appeared in front of Ning Fan. It was a golden treasure box that exuded the chi of moonlight. It was filled with ancient and profound spirit marks. There was also a pig's face carved on it. The pig's face was holding a gold ingot in its mouth. The greedy expression on its face was vividly depicted. This treasure was a Xiantian magical treasure. However, because it was too damaged, its power was greatly reduced. It was impossible to tell which grade of Xiantian magical treasure it used to be. At the moment when the treasure was unsealed, the pig's face on the treasure box suddenly spoke with the gold ingot in its mouth. "Oh beauty! You are finally willing to let your second grandpa out. Have you thought it through and decided to be the wife of this box spirit? You have good taste. Even though second grandpa is just a boar-headed box spirit with a wretched appearance now. I was a dignified admiral of the navy in charge of a region in the past. Beauty, oh beauty, let's make a deal. How about this? I'll tell you a story about my journey to the west back then. Let me smell your belly band. I want a belly band. Second grandpa wants a lot of belly bands. Bang. What answered the boar-faced box spirit was the Butcher Sovereign's cold and merciless punch. The boar-faced box spirit was directly smashed into the box. However, the pig's face then crawled out of the box shamelessly and grinned at the Butcher Sovereign lustfully. All of a sudden, Ning Fan somewhat understood why the Butcher Sovereign wanted to seal this magic treasure. It was probably not because he was worried that the chi of this magic treasure would leak out. It was probably because he wanted to seal this lustful and annoying box spirit. Ning Fan even secretly guessed that the Butcher Sovereign might have wanted to completely get rid of this lustful box spirit by generously giving this treasure to him. Take it. This thing is yours now. Even though this treasure box looks wretched, it's quite useful. If it has a foul mouth, you just need to beat it with your fists. It will become obedient after a while. The moment the Butcher Sovereign handed the treasure box to Ning Fan, the boar-headed box spirit immediately made a fuss. It was extremely unwilling to be transferred to Ning Fan. Unfortunately, the boar-headed box spirit's complaints were completely ignored by the Butcher Sovereign. Currently, the Butcher Sovereign was thinking about another matter. How could he have the time to care about this annoying box spirit? After recalling the incident where Ning Fan displayed the heaven sealing technique, the Butcher Sovereign decided to give Ning Fan a reminder. Before you enter the 6 paths of Yellow Spring, I want to ask you something. Did you learn the heaven sealing technique from the Chaos Koan sacred sect in the 3 great true worlds? Or perhaps, you are the same as your Eastern Heaven Ancestor Emperor. You learned it secretly. If he learned it secretly, it would be very dangerous. The Eastern Heaven Ancestor Emperor in the past was a good example. The so-called self-created technique of the Eastern Heaven Ancestor Emperor was actually not accurate. It could only be said that he was half right. Chapter 1048. Ning Fan was slightly stunned. What kind of force is the chaotic Koran sacred sect exactly? As for the samsara sealing technique, is it referring to my heaven sealing technique? It was not Ningfan's first time hearing the name of the chaotic koan sacred sect. When he first started cultivating the Tao, he had already heard of the two words chaotic koan sacred sect. At that time, his cultivation level was still low, and his opponent was a strong cultivator who knew how to use true yang energy. Luo Yu had passed on a mantra to him, and the mantra had completely swallowed his opponent's true yang energy. At that time, Ningfan's experience was still shallow. He did not know that the so-called true yang power was actually a cultivator's imitation of the extreme yang power of heaven and earth. As for the extreme yang power, it was something that was indispensable in the cultivation of a quasi-saint. The incantation which Luo Yu taught him seemed to have the ability to restrain the extreme yang power. Ningfan had always kept that incantation in his mind. In his future cultivation, he would occasionally study this incantation. He felt that this incantation was extremely profound and profound. However, it was hard to understand because it was incomplete. There is a fish in the Northern Ocean called Kuan. There is a saint in the Northern Ocean called Chaotic Kuan. There is a day in the Northern Ocean called In Rome. There is a thunder in the Northern Ocean called Thunder Grief. Perhaps, that was the first time Ningfan came into contact with the name Chaotic Kuan. However, at that time, he was far from knowing what these two simple words represented. Later on, he ascended to the eastern heaven. After cultivating for many years, he entered the ancient wild region to gain experience, and was involved in a huge storm. In that storm, he obtained a great fortune, and became the 10th barbarian god of the Tao barbarian race. He also obtained a fragment of the god-destroying shield, the heaven-opening treasure. I am the 6th fragment of the heaven-opening treasure of the chaotic Koan sacred sect. The breath of the 4th fragment is on you. Remembrance. Those were the words that the god-destroying shield said to him when he first met it. The god-destroying shield that Ningfan possessed was actually the 6th fragment of the real god-destroying shield after it was destroyed. The 4th fragment seemed to be the previous life of the undying great emperor. As for the god-destroying shield, it seemed to belong to the chaotic Koan sacred sect. However, it somehow fell into the hands of the first barbarian god, Manshan. In that storm, Ningfan came into contact with the chaotic Koan sacred sect for the second time. After that, Ningfan's memory-severing Tao sword was upgraded to the ocean-defying sword. Once again, he became involved with the chaotic Koan sacred sect. Ningfan could still remember the words left behind by the person who drew the Tao tool of the ocean-defying sword. The sea-defying sword is the sword of the superior disciples of the chaotic Koan holy sect. If a non-disciple of the chaotic Koan holy sect holds this sword, they can also enter the Tao field of the chaotic Koan holy sect and listen to the teachings of the sect. Because of this convenience, many cultivators fought bitterly for a drop of the imperishable rain, just to create this sword and enter the chaotic Koan holy sect to listen to the teachings of the sect. Along the way, how could Ningfan not know that the so-called chaotic Koan sacred sect was an extremely large force among the 3 great true worlds? As for how large it was, Ningfan did not have much of an idea. That was why he asked that question. Haven't you heard of the chaotic rock holy sect? I wonder what the fixed reincarnation technique is? Tu Huang was slightly surprised. No idea. You're not a descendant of the Eastern demonic ancestor? Didn't your family's elders tell you about this? There are descendants of the Eastern demonic ancestor? I'm not a descendant of this bloodline. I've never even heard of any news about the descendants of the Eastern demonic ancestor. Then where did you learn the fixed reincarnation technique? Because of some encounters, I learned the fixed body technique, prestige secret art and force secret art of the Eastern demonic ancestor. After mastering all of them, I managed to obtain the true form of the fixed sky technique. Besides, I didn't know that this fixed sky technique has another name. It's called the fixed reincarnation technique. You don't know anything, but you actually managed to figure out this technique on your own until now. You're really a freak. Tu Huang was filled with emotions. Then, he remembered that Ningfan was one of the rare cultivators in the world who had achieved the unity of heaven and man. Cultivators like Ningfan were the kind of people with the highest level of comprehension in the world. It was not impossible for him to figure out the fixed sky technique on his own when he was fortunate enough I'm a little bothered by what you said just now. Why did you call my fixed sky technique as the fixed reincarnation technique? And why did you mention the name of the chaotic Kuan sacred sect? You even said that the Eastern Heaven Ancestral Emperor's fixed sky technique was secretly learned. What does that mean? Ning Fan asked with a frown. You have too many questions. I'll answer you one by one. Let's talk about the chaotic Kuan sacred sect first. You should know that there are a total of 3 sects in the true world, right? The size of the true world is far from what the illusory world you're currently in can compare to. The 4 heavens and 9 worlds that you and the other external cultivators are currently in, together with the heavenly demon world, the ancient devil's abyss and many other broken worlds like the supreme pill sacred region of my Dabii clan, is the complete illusory world in the past. In the past, when the illusory world was complete, the demon race, the devil race and the divine race did not stop each other. Instead, they lived in the same world. Of course, in this world, there are not only the divine race, the demon race and the devil race. There are also many smaller races. For example, my Dabii clan and the various remnant races of the true world living in the cracks of the 4 heavens boundary river. However, even if the illusory world was in its complete state in the past, it is just like a grain of sand in the Ganges River when compared to the true world. It's really insignificant. The vastness of the true world is not something you can imagine. Based on what I saw in my dream, even an immortal Emperor realm expert would not be able to travel through a corner of the 3 great true worlds, even if he flies at full speed without resting or sleeping. Due to the boundlessness of the true world, no second-step cultivator can know exactly how many living beings and how many forces there are in a true world. To us cultivators of the illusory world, third-step sages are just legends while fourth-step immortal sovereigns are existences that are beyond our imagination. However, do you know that even sages and most of the immortal sovereigns of the true world would not dare to offend the chaotic Kuan sacred sect? The overall strength of the chaotic Kuan sacred sect is even greater than the Zido immortal region when it was at its peak. There's even a legend that immortal sovereign Zido, a peak expert among the immortal sovereigns, was subdued by a powerful being of the chaotic Kuan sacred sect before he attained his Tao. He was suppressed under Mount Buddha for 500 eras before he was released after his sentence was completed. The chaotic Kuan sacred sect, a force that even sages and most of the immortal sovereigns would not dare to offend. Legend has it that before immortal sovereign Zido attained his Tao, they had suppressed him for 500 eras. Ning Fan listened to the story with great interest as if he was listening to a story. On one hand, he was shocked by the strength of the chaotic Kuan sacred sect. On the other hand, he felt that the story that Tu Huang told him was too far away from him. Therefore, he did not feel much respect for the chaotic Kuan sacred sect. You sure are relaxed. Aren't you nervous at all after I've told you so much? Are you afraid? When Tu Huang saw Ning Fan listening to the story with great interest, he could not help but feel speechless. What do I need to be nervous about? What am I afraid of? Ning Fan asked in surprise. If I tell you that there's a huge problem with the heaven sealing technique that you've learned and your existence might be erased by the chaotic Kuan sacred sect sometime in the future because of this, wouldn't you be afraid? What do you mean? What exactly is wrong with this heaven sealing technique? Could it be? When he recalled what Tu Huang said about secretly learning the technique, Ning Fan could not help but have some guesses. Just like what I've said before, the heaven sealing technique of the Eastern demonic ancestor isn't just something that he created himself. I once overheard the conversation between some disciples of the chaotic Kuan sacred sect in my dream. They said that the signature ability of the chaotic Kuan sacred sect is the samsara sealing technique. As for the Eastern demonic ancestor, he was once a registered disciple of the chaotic Kuan sacred sect. He was expelled from the sect because he secretly learned this technique. In the past, the Eastern demonic ancestor did not manage to learn the complete samsara sealing technique. He only managed to learn a small part of it. However, his comprehension ability was astonishing. He combined the heaven sealing technique that he secretly learned and created his own unique heaven sealing technique. Do you know how the Eastern demonic ancestor died? I've once seen such a scene in my dream. A saint of the chaotic Koan sacred sect crossed the distance between the true world and the illusory dream world, and fished out the demon soul of the Eastern demonic ancestor from a pool called the Karma Pool. Then he killed him in the sacred sect. The crime of killing the Eastern demonic ancestor was exactly because of the heaven sealing technique. In the past, the Eastern demonic ancestor failed to learn the samsara sealing technique in secret. However, he was lucky enough to survive. This time, he created the heaven sealing technique on his own, and even gave it some form of the samsara sealing technique. That was why he violated the prohibition of the chaotic Koan sacred sect. After that saint even fished out many descendants of the Eastern demonic ancestor from the Karma Pool. All the descendants that he fished out were those who had already learned the complete heaven sealing technique. All of them were killed. As for the descendants of the Eastern demonic ancestor who had yet to learn the technique, he took pity on them and let them go. Now, are you afraid? Are you nervous? Sovereign Tu let out a soft sigh and glanced at Ning Fan. If what she saw in her dream was not an illusion, then once Ning Fan learns the complete heaven sealing technique, it was highly likely that the chaotic Koan sacred sect in the distant true world would use the same great ability to eliminate his existence one day in the future. Even if this place was the illusory dream world created by immortal sovereign Zido, and it was extremely far away from the true world, there was still no chance for him to survive. At this moment, Ning Fan's expression finally changed. Crossing the vast distance between the true world and the illusory dream world, to kill the descendants of the Eastern demonic ancestor. Is this really possible? Isn't this the illusory dream world created by immortal sovereign Zido? Didn't the eyeball say that the coordinates of the illusory dream world here are very secretive, and even the Tai Tsung clan could not find out about it? However, the result was that the Eastern demonic ancestor was killed by the saints of the chaotic Koan sacred sect who were far away from the true world. His crime was to cultivate the complete heaven sealing technique. Ning Fan was well aware that his current heaven sealing technique could only be considered to be at the initial stage. Currently, he could only fuse the body freezing technique, the secret word power, and the word prestige together. However, compared to the complete heaven sealing technique of the Eastern demonic ancestor, it was still lacking something important. In the past, Ning Fan did not know what was missing from his heaven sealing technique. Now he could make a guess that the missing thing must be related to the word samsara. After all, the complete heaven sealing technique of the Eastern demonic ancestor had incorporated some principles of the samsara sealing technique. However, the principles related to samsara were not present in Ning Fan's current heaven sealing technique. In other words, the heaven sealing technique that he was currently learning was not the complete heaven sealing technique. If he learns the complete version of this technique one day, and learns the essence of the samsara sealing technique, would it mean that the chaotic Koan sacred sect's annihilation would come soon? Without Sovereign Tu's reminder today, he would probably complete the samsara part of the heaven sealing technique someday in the future given his innate talent. The consequence of that would probably be death. That was the chaotic Koan sacred sect that even most of the immortal sovereigns of the true world were afraid of. Thinking about it again, ever since he ascended to the Eastern Heaven, even though he had been acting secretively, it was impossible for any of the great sovereigns of the Eastern Heaven not to know that he knew the secret technique of the Eastern Heaven ancestral god. It was clearly such a powerful secret technique, but none of the great sovereigns had ever schemed against him and seized this technique. Perhaps, the reason why those sovereigns of the Eastern Heaven were not greedy for this technique was because they did not want to follow in the footsteps of the Eastern demonic ancestor. This technique ends here. Don't try to perfect it anymore. Once you complete it, your death will come. Don't ever think about getting lucky. You should know how serious it is to steal and alter a sect's absolute technique. Not to mention the chaotic Koan sacred sect. Which sect in the world can tolerate the secret technique being leaked to outsiders? Sovereign Tu warned. I understand. Before I have the strength to go against the chaotic Koan sacred sect, I won't cultivate this technique to the complete version. Ning Fan answered after keeping silent for a while. Use it as little as possible. If possible, don't ever use this technique again. After all, This technique is related to the karma of the chaotic Koan sacred sect. Using this technique more often won't do you any good. I understand. It's good that you understand. I'm just reminding you out of concern for my partner. Alright. It's getting late. I'm going to gouge out an eyeball and give it to you. Poochie, it was the sound of fingernails piercing into flesh. It was the sound of fingernails digging out an eyeball. Sovereign 2 dug out his left eye as if there was no one else around. Strangely, not a single drop of blood flowed out. Obviously, gouging out an eyeball was within his capability. After gouging out his left eye, Sovereign 2 closed his left eye, leaving only his right eye open. Then, he passed his left eye, which was still warm, to Ning Fan's hand. Ning Fan was slightly speechless. You really don't cherish your body. First, she cut off her flesh to feed the heavenly dog. Now she just casually gouged out her left eye as if she was playing with it. This woman doesn't know how to cherish her body. This was the conclusion Ning Fan came to after summarizing all the things she had done. The physical body is just a bag of skin. The primordial spirit is the foundation. It's fine as long as you cherish your primordial spirit. There's no need to cherish a mere bag of skin. Anyway, I won't harm my primordial spirit. As for my physical body, it doesn't matter. Sovereign 2 answered indifferently. As long as you're happy. Ning Fan was too lazy to argue with Sovereign 2 about which one's physical body or primordial spirit was more important. He kept Sovereign 2's left eye and earnestly asked about the usage of the pig-faced treasure box. After that, he made a hand seal towards the pig-faced treasure box in his hand and chanted, Prajna Paramitha. It was the incantation to activate the treasure box. As he chanted the incantation, the pig-faced face on the treasure box suddenly spat out millions of rays of moonlight which swept across the surroundings. After about half the time it takes for an incense stick to burn, the pig-faced face opened its mouth and sucked all the moonlight back into its mouth. Then it let out a burp. In this way, the time of this place will be fixed by this treasure box. If something really happens to you, you can also reverse time and return to this place. However, I have to remind you that the usage of this treasure box isn't unlimited. Within a day, you can only be resurrected 10 times. In other words, you can only die 10 times in the depths of the Yellow Spring. Do you remember it? Yes. After recording the time, Ning Fan kept the pig-faced treasure box in his robe and jumped into the Yellow Spring Ocean from the ship. After the time it takes for an incense stick to burn, a muffled groan came from the depths of the ocean. Then, the moonlight swept across the entire heaven and earth. Everything began to reverse time. Ning Fan died for the first time. Chapter 1049. Ning Fan did not expect that the danger in the Yellow Spring Ocean was much more intense than what he imagined. Even though he activated the protective golden light of the god exterminating shield the moment he dived into the ocean, he still died. What he did not expect was that this tattered pig-faced treasure box could really make him go back in time and return to the moment he jumped into the Yellow Spring before he died. So the matter of time going back is real. So when one's divine ability reaches a certain level, it can actually be so heaven-defying. If Ning Fan still had some doubts about the power of this pig-faced treasure box before he jumped into the Yellow Spring Ocean, he no longer had any doubts now. At the same time, Ning Fan could also feel that the power of the saints will in the pig-faced treasure box had decreased a little after using the time reversal technique. Obviously, it had been consumed. In this way, the time of this place is fixed by this treasure box. If something really happens to you, you can also go back in time and return to this place. However, I have to remind you that the usage of this treasure box isn't unlimited. Within a day, you can only come back to life 10 times. In other words, you can only die 10 times in the depths of the Yellow Spring at most. Do you remember it? Oh, that was what Tu Huang had told him before he jumped into the Yellow Spring. Because of the time reversal technique, Tu Huang had to repeat it to him again. I do remember it. However, it seems like I only have 9 more times to go back in time in a day, Ning Fan said helplessly. What? Could it be that you have already gone back in time once? Tu Huang was slightly surprised. Then he asked with a frown. According to the Buddhist scriptures, there are a total of 9 nether palaces under the Yellow Spring Ocean. This yellow spring ocean isn't complete. It's just a part of it. There seems to be a 9-nether palace under it. Can you find the netherworld palace? Can you find the thing I need? Ningfan thought for a while. When he died for the first time, he seemed to have walked to an ancient palace at the bottom of the ocean. The words EU Palace seemed to be written in the ancient divine characters. After pondering for a while, he answered, I did find the palace. However, I was killed by a group of powerful ghosts before I could enter it. With the various types of defense that I'm good at, I can't withstand their attacks at all. As for the item that you're looking for, you haven't found it yet. According to the instructions given to me by your left eye, the item you're looking for should be inside the palace. Is it really in the palace? It's the same as what I saw in my dream. What should I do now? Do you want to rest for a while? Or do you want to enter the Yellow Springs again? Tu Huang asked. There's no need to rest. This treasure box is extremely mysterious. After turning back time, I've returned to the state I was in before I entered the Yellow Springs. Right now, my magic power is abundant and I don't need to rest. That's good. Be careful this time. Although this treasure box can help you reverse time, it can't be used limitlessly. Furthermore, if you encounter the suppression of a third-step power, you won't be able to reverse time. I don't know if this Yellow Springs has the power to suppress this treasure box, but I can't rule out this possibility. You can use this treasure box as your last resort, but you absolutely cannot become dependent on it. Do you understand? Tu Huang reminded sternly. I understand. If I don't die, I won't use this treasure box too much. What if this treasure box fails to work? Haha, I won't have another chance to be reborn. Seeing that Ningfan listened to her advice, Tu Huang nodded his head in satisfaction. Ningfan, on the other hand, changed his breathing to embryonic qi, and jumped into the Yellow Spring Ocean once again. Even though it was already his second time jumping into the ocean, the coldness of the ocean still made Ningfan shiver uncontrollably. The moment he jumped into the ocean, a powerful restrictive force was immediately activated. All of a sudden, the ocean that was supposed to be dead silent seemed to have produced a tsunami impact. A soul-piercing pain immediately spread throughout his entire body. This restrictive force would prevent all cultivators from entering the ocean. The strength of the restrictive force would vary according to the cultivator's cultivation base. Most of them would be a level stronger than those who enter the ocean. If an expert above the Immortal Emperor realm were to jump into the ocean, the restrictive force of the ocean would be strong enough to stop a quasi-Saint realm expert. If a quasi-Saint realm expert were to enter the ocean, the power of the restrictive force would be as strong as a third-step Saint realm expert, causing the quasi-Saint realm expert's expression to change drastically. None of them would dare to step into the ocean. With Ningfan's cultivation base, the restrictive force of the ocean was also strong enough to blast an Immortal King realm expert away. Fortunately, he immediately activated the God Extermination Shield to protect himself. With this defense that was far beyond his current cultivation base, he barely managed to block the restrictive force of the surrounding seawater. In this world, there were many cultivators who could surpass their cultivation base. However, those who could surpass their cultivation base to Ningfan's level were rare. Even figures like Tu Huang and Supreme Being Niu Gui could not resist the restrictive force of the seawater, which was a level higher than their cultivation base. If that was not the case, Tu Huang would not have to ask Ningfan for help. There was really no one who could do it. Only Ningfan gave her a hint of expectation. Now, however, Ningfan had perfectly answered her expectation and successfully entered the bottom of the Yellow Spring. It also made her believe that all her efforts along the way were not in vain. Instead, it was worth it. Under the protection of the golden light, Ningfan continued to dive deeper into the Yellow Spring. As he went deeper, the seawater around him gradually turned from light yellow to dark yellow. In the end, it even had an oily and viscous feeling. After the time it takes for an incense stick to burn, Ningfan reached the bottom of the Yellow Spring. Then he moved towards a certain direction at the bottom of the ocean based on the weak senses of Tu Huang's left eye. His surroundings were filled with oily yellow seawater, causing his visibility to be extremely low. Even his spirit sense was greatly suppressed in this place. He could not spread it too far away. He could only spread it to a distance of 20 zhang at the most. This was also the result of Ningfan's spirit sense improving tremendously. If his spirit sense was still at the mid-level immortal venerable realm in the past, he would probably not be able to see anything after entering the bottom of the ocean. Not far away, the coral reefs formed a mountain range. Under the protection of the many coral reefs, it formed an underwater valley. In the middle of the valley, there was an ancient palace. On the signboard, the words EU Palace were written in large ancient characters. The carved railings and jade bricks outside the palace were still there. However, most of them were severely damaged as if they had been destroyed by the flames of war. There were also hundreds of corpses of ancient cultivators lying on the ground. Some of them were complete while others were incomplete. All of them had decayed to the point where only their white bones were left. Some of the white bones had even turned into fossils. It was no longer possible to tell what cultivation base these ancient cultivators had when they were alive. Broken magic treasures and weapons were scattered all over the ground. All of them had rusted into scrap metal. There were also many battle flags scattered around the place. Those battle flags had already decayed and would break at the slightest touch. However, one could still vaguely see the ancient divine characters embroidered on the flags. The Chaotic Kuan Yellow Spring Sect. All the battle flags in this place were embroidered with these 5 words without exception. When Ningfan saw the 2 words Chaotic Kuan again, he could no longer look at them indifferently. Instead, he inwardly guessed that these ancient cultivators should be the residents of the true world when they were alive. It was highly possible that they were related to the Chaotic Kuan sacred sect. However, a guess could only be a guess. He could not get any confirmation from the ruins on the ground. Ningfan's gaze shifted to the palace itself. His expression became unprecedentedly solemn. The first time he entered the Yellow Spring, he died in this palace. The palace seemed to be empty, but if he takes even half a step into the palace, a large number of ghosts would rush out of the palace. Those ghosts were extremely good at using illusion techniques. However, this place happened to be the blind spot of the God-vanquishing shield. One should know that even though the God-vanquishing shield's defense was strong, its defensive range was only limited to physical attacks and magic attacks. It could not do anything against illusion techniques. After all, illusion techniques already belong to the category of spiritual attacks. Because of that, even though Ningfan had activated the God-vanquishing shield to defend himself, he was still killed by the ghosts in the palace. If it wasn't because he had the pig-faced treasure box that allowed him to reverse time, his existence would have already been erased from this world. If I didn't miss it, there were a total of 706 ghosts that rushed out of the palace. This number is exactly the same as the number of corpses outside the palace. This shouldn't be a coincidence. It's highly possible that those ghosts were formed by the ancient cultivators outside the palace after they died. Besides, it seems like the restrictive power of the seawater of the Yellow Spring is only effective against me. As for those ghosts, it doesn't seem to be suppressed at all and they can swim freely. This time, Ningfan did not rush into the palace. Instead, he observed his surroundings. Tu Huang, who was in his bosom, sent out a weak signal towards the direction of EU Palace with his left eye. It was as if there was something inside the palace that was attracting him to get closer. It should be what Tu Huang was looking for. The God-vanquishing shield can withstand the restrictive power of the seawater in this place, but it can't withstand the illusion technique attacks of those ghosts. In that case, I can only use my own illusion technique power to resist the enemy's illusion technique attacks. Among the 706 ghosts, none of them are at the immortal venerable realm. The strongest among them is only at the life immortal realm and transcending truth realm. Their spiritual intelligence isn't very high either. However, the spirit sense of each of them is extremely strong. All of them are at the level of an ancient immortal venerable. When the 706 traces of venerable immortal venerable realm spirit sense join forces to cast an illusion technique, even an immortal emperor wouldn't be able to withstand the combined attack of their illusion technique alone, let alone me. It's impossible to break through them head-on. The only way is to attack them separately. The problem is, how should I do it? Just as Ningfan was pondering, the treasure box in his bosom suddenly let out a squeak like a pig. Then it let out a despicable laugh. Hey, my new master seems to have encountered some trouble. Do you need me to teach you a way to deal with these ghosts from the heavenly river? Ghosts from the heavenly river? Are you referring to the ghosts in the palace? Ning Fan turned his hand and took out the wretched pig-faced jade box from his bosom. Then he asked with a frown. Ghosts from the heavenly river? Oh my, did second grandpa say something like that? No. I'm talking about dealing with these water ghosts of the Yellow Spring, not the heavenly river ghosts. You've misheard me. The pig-faced jade box suddenly changed its tone and put on a secretive expression. Ning Fan gave the pig-faced spirit a deep look. However, he was too lazy to ask further. He just said indifferently, Do you have a way to deal with these water ghosts? Of course. Who is second grandpa? Before second grandpa passed away, he was the heavenly river. He was the marshal of the Yellow Springs Water Army. He ruled over the 9 great heavenly rivers. Commanding the water army of the 9 netherworld was as glorious as it could be. Get to the point. How are we going to deal with these water ghosts? Ning Fan interrupted the pig-faced box spirit's words with a hint of impatience. Inwardly, he was secretly guessing the origin of this box spirit. How about we make a deal? I can teach you how to deal with these water ghosts, but you have to kneel down and call me second grandpa 3 times, give me 500 taels of heavenly Dao silver flowers, and give me 8 to 10 beauties to have fun with, and, without waiting for the pig-faced man to finish listing all of his conditions, Ning Fan directly frowned. Just like what Tu Huang had instructed him to do, he punched the pig-faced man's face, directly causing it to be bruised and swollen. It even sank into the surface of the box. Kneel. This pig-face's joke seemed to be a little too much. But then the pig-faced man drilled out again and laughed smugly. Boorish, really boorish. Unfortunately, it didn't hurt. It didn't hurt at all. You can't hurt me. I'm formed from the power of the Tao origin. Nothing can hurt me. Even if you destroy the jade box, I won't perish with it. At most, I'll lose a place to stay. Ha ha ha. The method that Master Green Spirit taught you to deal with me doesn't work. Sure enough, he was not mistaken. This box spirit was very special. It was not formed by the magic treasure itself. Instead, it was condensed by someone using the power of the Tao origin. Ning Fan recalled the shadow of the Yin Phoenix in the Yin Yang Square seal. It was condensed by the power of the Tao origin, making it hard for anything to hurt it. Then he recalled how the bridge god Gu Jiang was extremely arrogant and disobedient towards him when the Tao origin bridge appeared. The Tao origin was the origin of the great Tao. It was a power that was above the laws of the great Tao. The entity that was condensed by the power of the Tao origin could not be hurt by anything. However, it did not mean that it would not be hurt at all. It was just that very few people at the second step of the Tao origin realm could do that. As for this pig-faced box spirit, the power of the Tao origin that it used to condense its spirit body was unimaginably pure. As a result, its Tao origin spirit body was much harder to hurt compared to ordinary Tao origin entities. Even a quasi-saint realm being could not hurt it. Before it met Ning Fan, the previous masters of the pig-faced box spirit could not do anything to it. That was how it gradually developed its arrogant and willful personality towards its previous masters. Even though the pig-faced box spirit addressed them as master and servant, it had never shown any respect to any of them. It was just a common occurrence for it to speak rudely. If its master was a woman, this lecherous pig-faced box spirit would tease her even more. So what if I have a foul mouth? Can you hurt my second grandpa? At most, you will just pretend to destroy this treasure box to scare me. To me, I will just lose a place to stay. I can just find another place to stay. To you guys, it is the same as losing a great treasure. Are you willing to destroy it? Even if you are willing to destroy the treasure box, so what? Second grandpa won't be destroyed along with the treasure box. Ha! Second grandpa is invincible under the heavens. Second grandpa can do whatever he wants. Little fellow, it's not right to use force recklessly. That's something that only boorish people would do. Are you a boorish person? Oh my, you are. However, second grandpa isn't. Second grandpa is a famous scholar and a cultured person. Second grandpa won't use force against you. Second Grandpa will only reason with you. Forget it. Actually, you still want to hit me, right? Then go ahead and hit me. If you can hurt me even a little bit, Second Grandpa will change his surname to yours. You can't do it, right? I know you can't do it. Look at you. You're already an adult. Why don't you know what's good for you? Second Grandpa wanted to help you out of goodwill, but you actually directly hit my face with your fist. Rude. Really rude. If I have good intentions, do you need me to kneel down and call you Second Grandpa 3 times? I don't know how your previous masters tolerated you, but I'm different. In front of me, you better restrain yourself. I don't need you to be loyal to me, and I don't need you to respect me like a god. However, if you don't even have the basic respect, then I don't mind killing you here. Ningfan said indifferently. Young man, you sure have a big mouth. Can you hurt me? You even want to kill me? You're really a kid who doesn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. Now I've changed my mind. Just now, I only asked you to kneel down and call me 3 times. Now I've increased the price. You have to call me 10 times. No, 20 times. This is the consequence of offending Second Grandpa. If you want to ask Second Grandpa to do something for you, then you have to show some sincerity. If you don't call me, I won't help you. If I don't help you, it will be difficult for you to deal with these water ghosts of Yellow Spring. I've given you a chance. Ningfan smiled faintly, looking harmless. This made the pig-faced man look down on Ningfan even more. However, if Old Wu was here, he would certainly not have the same thought as the pig-faced man, because Old Wu knew very well that as long as Ningfan smiled like this, he would definitely be ruthless. Give me a chance? Don't say it as if you can hurt me. While the pig-faced man was showing off, his expression suddenly stiffened. All of a sudden, he felt a sharp pain. After letting out a scream, his expression changed drastically. To his surprise, at this moment, Ningfan was holding the treasure box with his left hand. A faint sword light condensed on the index finger of his right hand. Like a flower touching the water, he slashed at the treasure box with ease. This finger sword did not have the power to destroy heaven and earth. When it slashed through the treasure box, it did not even leave a scratch on it. Instead, it directly went through the box. However, it was this finger sword that accurately slashed at his Dao Source spirit body, and almost cut his Dao Source spirit body into 2. The pain of this sword was indescribable. It was indescribable how terrifying this sword was. The pig-faced box spirit was horrified to find that its indestructible Dao origin spirit body had actually collapsed crazily under the sword light. It could not be stopped at all. Even Nyogue's previous master could not do this. After all, its Dao origin spirit body was not formed from an ordinary Dao origin. However, this young man was able to hurt its Dao origin spirit body with his mere immortal venerable cultivation base. How is this possible? I will die. I will really die. My nemesis. Second Grandpa has actually met his nemesis today. Stop. 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 If you dare to destroy my spirit body, my eldest senior brother, will certainly not let you go. The pig-faced box spirit was so scared that his words were trembling. However, when he thought of his eldest senior brother, he regained some of his confidence and said while clenching his teeth, "Let me tell you, my eldest senior brother is really strong. His stick is really hard. He can send you to the sky with just one stick." Hiss. What answered the pig-faced box spirit was the sound of its spirit body being torn apart, and the sound of sword light. Ningfan was too lazy to care about how strong his eldest senior brother was. No matter what, he was going to completely subdue this box spirit today. Thus, before his spirit body completely collapsed, the pig-faced box spirit finally gave in. I am meat on someone's chopping block. What can I do? What can I do? Young man, you win. Stop it. I promise to help you. I won't negotiate with you anymore. Hey, why aren't you stopping yet? Second Grandpa has already given in to you. What exactly do you want? Don't go too far. If you continue to force me, I am going to flip out. Why you? No. Don't. My spirit body is really going to break into 2 pieces. Master, I was wrong. Quickly stop, ah. I will call you Grandpa. I will call you Grandpa. I will call you Grandpa 100 times. I will call you Grandpa 1,000 times. Grandpa, please spare my life. The box spirit that was acting like a king just now finally gave in. It was the first time in countless years that it felt like death was so close to it. In the depths of its heart that was filled with despair, it could not help but think of an old saying. Good and evil will always be rewarded. The heavenly Tao is a cycle. If you don't believe it, look up and see who will the heavens spare. Ning Fan finally stopped and said with a smile. Do you know what to do in the future? Yes, Grandpa. Thank you, Grandpa, for showing mercy. You are my biological grandpa. You are. Just call me Master. Ning Fan said with a frown. Yes, yes, yes. Master. Call me Master. The pig-faced box spirit admitted defeat respectfully. Chapter 1050. As the saying goes, evil people will be tormented by evil people. The pig-faced box spirit was not a kind creature. However, to Ning Fan it was not a big problem. Ning Fan had subdued many servants and most of them were villains. Rogue Devil Big Head, Dark Luck Crow Old 8, Candlebow Spirit. Now there was another pig-faced box spirit. He had a lot of experience in dealing with villains. It was nothing more than using both carrot and stick. Ning Fan had already demonstrated his carrot and stick to the pig-faced box spirit. At least on the surface, it seemed to have been subdued. Well, there's no need to be impatient. Now the most important task is to get rid of the water ghosts in this place with the help of this pig-faced box spirit. Now that the pig-faced box spirit behaved so obediently, Ning Fan stopped his attack and asked, Tell me, what method do you have to deal with the water ghosts in this place? His voice still carried a hint of coldness, scaring the pig-faced box spirit. He was severely injured by Ning Fan's finger sword, and almost died on the spot. Now that he was lucky enough to stay alive, his fear towards Ning Fan had risen to an unprecedented level. How would he dare to be disrespectful towards Ning Fan? He was even more afraid that he would say something wrong and anger this malefic star again. Thus he answered with fear and trepidation. Master, you might not know this. Even though the water of the Yellow Spring can nurture souls, the ghosts that are born in the Yellow Spring have a huge weakness. Others might not know their weakness, but I, who used to be part of the Yellow Spring Navy, know it very well. I know at least 10 ways to lure and kill these water ghosts. However, all of them require a lot of time. Of course, if Master just wants to enter this palace and not kill all the ghosts, I have a better way. In fact, as long as I use a small magic technique and give an order, these water ghosts will immediately retreat. They won't dare to stop Master. Ning Fan's eyes instantly narrowed. Give an order, and all the water ghosts will immediately retreat? And he used to be part of the Yellow Spring Navy? What's the background of this pig-faced man? Are you serious? Can you really do it? How would I dare to lie to Master? Before I died, I was in charge of the Yellow Spring 9 Nether. I know these water ghosts like the back of my hand. Of course, it won't be difficult to deal with them. Master, just place this treasure box outside the palace and step back slightly. Watch how I scare these water ghosts away, and clear the obstacles for Master to move forward. The pig-faced man made a solemn vow and looked as if he was eager to prove himself. He knew very well that he had already offended Ning Fan. Even though Ning Fan had temporarily let him go, it was not a guarantee. It was hard to guarantee that Ning Fan would not settle the score with him in the future. Only by performing meritorious deeds to make up for his mistake could the pig-faced man feel a sense of security. At this moment, in order to protect himself, he really wished that he could use all of his strength to help Ning Fan. If you really have that ability, I'll be looking forward to it. Ning Fan remained silent for a while. In the end, he did as he was told and approached the palace step by step. When he was 10 steps away from the entrance of the palace, he did not continue forward. Instead, he placed the jade box in his hand on the ground and took a few steps back. Seeing that Ning Fan had retreated to a sufficient distance, the pig-faced man took a deep breath and suddenly turned into a ray of green light, flying out from the jade box. He landed on the ground and transformed into a wild boar demon with a round waist. This wild boar demon had a dark face and short hair. His ears were as big as cattail leaf fans. However, he was wearing an extremely coquettish bright red wedding robe, and a black hat with golden leaves on both sides of the hat. He looked just like a bridegroom. If this bridegroom outfit is worn by Ningfan, perhaps he would look a little romantic and unrestrained. However, when it was worn by a wild boar demon, it seemed rather out of place. The clothes that this wild boar demon was wearing were even more tacky. There was a golden belt around his waist, and a circle of shiny golden Buddha beads hanging around his neck. There were a total of 20 Buddha beads, and all of them were the size of goose eggs. Each of his fingers was adorned with pearls and jewels of various colors. He grinned. Yeah, it's actually a mouthful of golden teeth, somewhat tacky. Ningfan was slightly speechless. Just by looking at the clothes that this fellow was wearing, he knew that he was also a top-grade expert. It seems like he is the same as Big Head, Old Wu Ba and Candlebow Spirit. This lowly one Zhu'er greets master. The wild boar demon bowed to Ningfan. He did not dare to raise his head too high and did not even dare to breathe too loudly. Obviously, he was afraid of Ningfan. Is Zhu'er your real name? Yes, yes, yes. My name is Zhu'er. I don't change my name or my surname. Zhu'er's eyes were a little weak, but he still forced himself to say it. How could Ningfan not see that this wild boar demon was lying? Zhu'er must be an alias. However, he was too lazy to ask about it. He was not interested in the wild boar demon's real name at all. He just gave an indifferent order. Then you can start to disperse the water ghosts in this place. Master, can you disperse the sword chi in my body first? Terrifying. Master's abilities are really too frightening. It's just a small amount of sword chi that remains in my body. Even if I use all my strength, I won't be able to resist it. With the interference of this sword chi, my spirit body won't be able to recover. I'm confident that I can make these water ghosts retreat with just a command. However, there's a prerequisite. I need to use some kind of secret technique. If my spirit body is damaged, the success rate of using the secret technique isn't high. Master, what do you think? Zhu'er stammered and begged while rubbing his pig waist pitifully. Due to Ningfan's finger sword attack just now, the part that connected Zhu'er's spirit body to his upper and lower body was almost cut into two. Only a tiny bit of his body was still connected. Speaking of which, this Zhu'er was quite capable. His wounds could actually recover on their own. This was not something that other artifact spirits could do. However, because the sword chi that Ningfan left in his body was wreaking havoc in his body, his attempt to recover was futile. Just as he managed to recover a little, it would be destroyed by the sword chi again. The process was intermittent and endless. Unless Ningfan took away the remaining sword chi in his body, Zhu'er would not have a way to recover his spirit body. That was exactly what he was asking for right now. Ningfan did not say much. He just casually made a suction force towards the wild boar demon's body from afar. Instantly, traces of white sword chi were drawn out from his body. The wild boar demon was overjoyed. As soon as the sword chi in his body was cleared, he immediately circulated his ability. The broken parts of his spirit body quickly recovered with a sizzling sound. Haha. I, second grandpa, have recovered. As soon as the wild boar demon was happy, he wanted to let out a loud roar. However, when the words reached the tip of his tongue, he realized that it was inappropriate. He was no longer the same as before. In front of his new master, it was better for him to restrain his arrogance. Thus, halfway through his roar, he changed his tone and said, "Oh hee. I Zhu Xiao'er have recovered. Finally, I can contribute to master in my peak state." The corner of Ningfan's mouth could not help but twitch. Fake. This is too fake. This kind of hypocrisy, and this kind of ability to talk nonsense in a serious manner, is really comparable to old Wu's. It seems like this Zhu'er is not really a fool. He is just used to being arrogant. If he encounters an enemy that he cannot defeat, he will definitely be able to adapt to the situation. Can you cast a technique to drive away the water ghosts in this place now? If I'm not mistaken, your spirit body can't leave this treasure box for too long. Master has good eyesight. You actually saw through this with just a glance. Among all the cultivators that I have met in my life, Master's eyesight is definitely the best. Zhu Er pretended to be shocked and flattered Ning Fan. How good does one's eyesight need to be to see through all these? Cut the crap and get down to business. Ning Fan was speechless. Yes, Zhu Er answered respectfully. Inwardly, however, he was feeling puzzled. Could it be that he has not flattered Ning Fan for many years and his skills have become rusty? Otherwise, why was his flattery unable to move Ning Fan at all? It seems like he is really used to being a lord. He is not used to being a lackey again. Sigh. It seems like I have to find a chance to practice this skill again. Knowing that Ning Fan was in a hurry, Zhu Er naturally did not dare to waste any more time. He formed a hand seal with both of his hands and chanted an incantation. Then, the dead silent seawater at the bottom of the sea suddenly surged. There were water ripples. At first, the ripples were extremely slow. As time passed, they gradually became faster and faster. In the end, the ripples were so strong that Ning Fan could not stand steadily. Zhu Er, on the other hand, remained as steady as Mount Tai in the midst of the ripples. He just kept chanting incantations and casting magic techniques. He was a tool spirit. His body did not have any trace of chi of cultivation base. However, the ability that he displayed at this moment made Ning Fan not dare to underestimate him. Within the waves, a green light gradually appeared. In the dim and dark sea, the green light was especially dazzling like the stars in the night sky. At first, the green light was extremely weak. At a certain moment, it suddenly shone brightly and swept across the entire place. Within the green light, an incense burner table with melons and fruits appeared. Zhu Er bowed 3 times towards the incense burner table, and chanted words such as "The 3 pure ones protect me," and "This disciple respectfully invites all the saints to descend." Upon hearing what he said, Ning Fan's first reaction was that Zhu Er was using a magic technique similar to the God-inviting technique, to invite the incarnation of an expert to descend. Moreover, from the words he said, the one he was inviting was actually related to the word saint. Could it be that he is inviting the saints? Is this possible? Inviting the legendary saints to descend in an illusory place like the illusory dream world? What will happen if a saint really descends? Or perhaps inviting the saints is just a slogan or an incantation. That's all. Ning Fan did not know Zhu Er's exact background. However, based on the information that he had obtained so far, this Zhu Er was at least an expert of the true world. He had even guarded the real Yellow Spring 9 Nether. What kind of effect did Zhu Er, who was concentrating on casting the spell at this moment, have? What kind of great changes would happen in this place? Bang! Just when Ning Fan's nerves were tensed up, the green light surrounding Zhu Er exploded. After the explosion, the incense burner table disappeared without a trace. What replaced it was Zhu Er, who was blown up by the green light. That's impossible. Impossible. Could it be that my skill is rusty? How could I fail to cast the technique? Zhu Er rubbed his mane, which was smoking from the explosion. His face was filled with disbelief. Ning Fan was speechless once again. He actually thought that a saint would descend and acted as if he was facing a great enemy. In the end, Zhu Er caused such an explosion for him. Can you do it or not? If you can't expel the water ghosts in this place, just say it. Ning Fan said impatiently. This is just a small mistake. Don't worry, Master. I will definitely succeed next time. I will. After the time it takes for an incense to burn, boom. Explosion. 2 hours later. Boom, 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 again and again. 4 hours later. 6 hours later. Zhu Er had already failed to cast the technique for more than 10 times. His entire spiritual body was blown up to the point where there was a burnt smell. Ning Fan sighed. He felt that he was a little foolish for giving Zhu Er chances time and time again. If it wasn't because Ning Fan could see Zhu Er's extremely serious attitude when casting the technique, he would almost think that Zhu Er was purposely finding fault with him. Can you do it or not? Ning Fan remained silent for a long time and said, Master, please give me one last chance. I can definitely do it. Zhu Er said with fear. If you really can't do it, you can also use other methods to kill all the water ghosts here. This method of yours didn't save me much time. It's really the last time. Please give me one last chance. My good master, my good master. This is the last time. Yes, it's the last time. I already understand why I failed to cast the technique. It's not because of me but because of the change of heaven and earth. I see. Zhu Er summoned the incense burner table again, causing the green light to shine brightly. The intensity of the green light continued to rise. Gradually, it was about to exceed the limit of the seawater here. Once it exceeds the limit, it would explode again. This time, however, when the intensity of the green light reached its limit, Zhu Er suddenly changed. With a change of his hand seal, the green light in the area began to shrink and condense. Bit by bit, it condensed into an incomparably huge green halo. That ring of light constantly emitted a terrifying aura force. Then, an elderly man who was shrouded in green light walked out from the ring of light. His back was facing Zhu Er and Ning Fan while he stood in the direction of EU Palace with his hands clasped behind his back. That huge green halo was obviously the saint halo that only a saint could possess. That elderly man actually possessed the terrifying aura force of a saint realm expert. It was as if he could destroy the entire illusory world with just a single thought. What he said made Ning Fan's expression change. I came here under the will of the heavens to destroy this world. Anyone who stands in my way will be killed without mercy. Ha ha. Ha 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 ha. Ha ha ha. Those words and that incomparably savage laughter seemed to be directed at the ghosts in the palace. At the same time, it also seemed to be directed at Ning Fan. The tremendous aura force carried by that laughter kept reverberating in Ning Fan's ears, as if it was the sound of heaven and earth itself. Moreover, every time it reverberated, Ning Fan's sea of consciousness would be in excruciating pain. However, at this moment, Ning Fan no longer cared about the pain. His entire being was filled with astonishment because of the brief words of this mysterious saint. Destruction of this world. This Zhu Er actually invited a saint over. Moreover, the saint he invited actually has the intention to destroy the illusory world. What a joke. Isn't he going to drive away the ghosts? Why did it become the destruction of this world? Ning Fan's eyes turned blood red in an instant. Countless speculations appeared in his mind. Then he felt a hint of regret. I shouldn't have given Zhu Er the chance to invite a saint over. I shouldn't have. Could this Zhu Er be a great enemy who has disguised himself very well? The chi of this saint did not feel fake at all. Even with the eyesight of a cultivator at the second level of the heavenly being realm, he could only see the truth. This was a true saint. If this saint was a great enemy of the Purple Do immortal domain, and if inviting this saint over was Zhu Er's scheme, what happened today would probably become the root of the calamity that would destroy the illusory world. Moreover, this root of the calamity only succeeded because of Ning Fan's continuous indulgence. Was there anyone in the illusory world who could go against a third-step saint? During the catastrophe of the wildlands that day, Mo, who was merely a grand cultivation realm expert from the ancient times, had nearly wiped out many immortal emperors of the illusory world. If a great enemy of the saint realm comes, even if the forces of the four heavens and 9 worlds, the heavenly demon world, the ancient devil's abyss and many other worlds join forces, they might not be able to resist it. They could only watch helplessly as they were destroyed. If the illusory world is really destroyed because of this, then he, Ning Fan, would become a troublesome sinner of the illusory world. It was because this great enemy of the saint realm had come under his indulgence. Zhu Er, give me an explanation. Ning Fan's killing intent surged. This world was the illusory world that was created by immortal sovereign Zido. This was the last home that countless martyrs of Zido had risked their lives to protect. This was also his home. It was the place where his close friends and family lived. He could forgive Zhu Er's previous verbal offense. However, if Zhu Er had the intention to destroy this world, it would be a different story, because it meant that his close friends and family would be placed in danger. If that is the case, Ning Fan must make Zhu Er pay the price right here, and now even if he has to risk everything. It had been many years since Ning Fan unleashed such a strong killing intent. Under the roar of his killing intent, Zhu Er, who was initially feeling proud of himself, was shocked and bewildered. I have finally succeeded in performing the technique. Why is my master getting angry? Could it be that my master has misunderstood something? Misunderstood that I have invited a real saint realm? Misunderstood that the saint I invited is really going to destroy the illusory world? Master, please calm down. You've misunderstood. You've misunderstood. This isn't a real saint realm expert. It's just an illusion technique. If you don't believe me, I can ask this saint realm expert to turn around. Master will know that I'm telling the truth with just a glance. Zhu Er explained while chanting an incantation to control the saint realm expert. All of a sudden, the elderly saint who was standing with his hands clasped behind his back and looking at the heavens disdainfully turned around. How old was that face? However, that face was exactly the same as Ning Fan's. It was exactly how Ning Fan would look like when he was old. Ning Fan's eyes flashed with a slightly strange expression. He did not think that there would be a saint in the true world who looked so similar to him. He also did not think that there would be a saint realm expert who would transform into his appearance out of boredom. Master, you have to believe me. This isn't a real saint realm expert. It's just an empty shell that is used to scare people. The aura force and whatnot are all real. However, that aura force can't hurt people. At most, it can only bring great pain to people's sea of consciousness and increase people's trust in this matter. Master, if you still don't believe me, you can go closer and touch him. This saint realm expert is like a bubble. It will burst at the first touch. Ning Fan walked closer to the saint realm expert and touched the saint realm expert who had the same appearance as him vigilantly. Then, the saint realm expert, the ring of the incipient saint and the aura force and whatnot all burst like bubbles with a bang. It's fake. It's actually fake. His aura force and aura force are obviously the same as that of a real saint realm expert. However, it's just a shell that looks good but is actually useless. It will crack at the first touch. Ning Fan had never felt so speechless since he started cultivating the Tao. He acted as if he was facing a great enemy, and he even thought about the ending of dying in battle here. However, Zhu Er just told him that this great enemy of the saint realm expert was fake. This is an illusion technique? What grade of illusion technique is this? High-grade supreme profound realm. It's an illusion technique that only a real saint realm expert would use. No wonder even my heavenly being vision couldn't see any trace of falseness. It's actually a high-grade supreme profound realm illusion technique that only a saint realm expert would be able to use. I reckon that not many people in the entire illusionary world would be able to see through the falseness of that saint's aura. How did you use an illusion technique that only a saint realm expert would be able to use? Aha! I didn't use the complete technique. It's just a part of it. The one who taught me this technique is a real saint realm expert. He once said that when this technique is in its complete state, I can create a real saint realm expert to aid me in battle. However, if it's incomplete, I can only create an illusion but not its actual form. In short, it can only create a saint realm expert to scare people. It doesn't have much use. No. It's already a very terrifying use if it can scare people, alright? The premise is that this illusion must not be exposed by others. If it wasn't because this saint realm expert had the same face as Ning Fan, and if it wasn't because of Zhu Er's reminder, Ning Fan would never think that this saint realm expert was a fake. Speaking of which, why did the saint realm expert you created have the same appearance as me? If he doesn't have the same appearance as you, this technique wouldn't be able to succeed. Zhu Er smiled apologetically. What do you mean? In short, it's because Master is one of the few Tao obsession cultivators in this world. That's why this technique could imitate Master's appearance and succeed. What does it have to do with me being a Tao obsession cultivator? Ning Fan looked at Zhu Er with a frown. He did not seem to have displayed his Tao obsession in front of Zhu Er, but Zhu Er was able to recognize it. It's because Zhu Er opened his mouth, wanting to explain to Ning Fan. However, his expression suddenly changed, and he revealed a look of extreme fear. His mouth was wide open but he could not utter a single word. His forehead was drenched in cold sweat. It was as if in the current heaven and earth and under the current great Tao, a great calamity would befall him as soon as he uttered those taboos. After a very, very long time, Zhu Er said dejectedly and sorrowfully, "I'm sorry, Master. I can't tell you the reason. It's because I can't speak." Can't speak. Can't speak again. Previously, Sovereign 2 had also told him many secrets of the true world. However, none of them had any unspeakable situations. However, the things that Zhu Er wanted to tell him had such an unimaginable situation. From the looks of it, not all the matters of the true world could not be discussed. Some of them could be discussed while some of them could not be touched at all. Forget it. It's fine if you can't speak. Let's change the question. Can't the appearance of the saint that you transform into be someone else? For example, a random stranger. In the past I could. But now I can't. Only the appearance of the Tao obsession cultivator can be used to display this technique. Zhu Er sighed. Ning Fan frowned. Because of Zhu Er's words, he had countless guesses in his mind. However, he could not get any confirmation. There were too many great secrets of heaven and earth that could not be touched. There were too many things that could not be spoken. Do you have to make it look like me? Yes, if that's the case. Then forget it. Master, please allow me to rest for a while. Every time this technique is successfully used, it will consume a huge amount of energy. I can't use it again until I have completely rested. How long do I need to rest before I can use this technique again? 6 hours? Zhu Er was a little unconfident and said with a dry smile. Ning Fan frowned. Tell me the truth. 3 days. Tell me the truth. 3 years. I'll give you one last chance. Tell me the truth. 3 million years. I need 3 million years to recover after using this technique once. This time he was telling the truth. Ning Fan immediately felt a headache. Then why did you ask me to wait here for you to rest for a while? Do you want me to wait here for you for 3 million years? I deserve to die. I'm just afraid that Master will be angry if I tell you the truth. If time is reversed, will your energy loss disappear? Will you return to your peak state like before? Ning Fan asked after keeping silent for a while. That's right. There's still this way. Master, quickly use the treasure box's ability to reverse time. This way, this lowly one will be able to use this technique again. If that's the case, Prajna Paramitha. Time returned to the beginning for the second time. Other than Ning Fan and the box spirit who could retain their memories before time was reversed, all the other living beings lost their memories of this period of time as time was reversed. Therefore, when Ning Fan appeared on the ship again, the words that he heard were still the same words that Sovereign 2 had said to him before. In Sovereign 2's eyes, Ning Fan had not entered the Yellow Spring yet, and he was planning to do so. In this way, the time of this place will be fixed by this treasure box. If something really happens to you, you can also reverse time and return to this place. However, I have to remind you that the usage of this treasure box isn't unlimited. Within a day, you can only be revived 10 times. In other words, you can only die 10 times in the depths of the Yellow Spring at most. Do you remember that? Yes, I do. But I only have 8 more chances to reverse time. Ning Fan said helplessly. What? You've already died twice? And you can say that. The first time was the moment before Ning Fan died, and he was forced to reverse time. The second time was when someone actively used the treasure box. The situation was slightly different, but Ning Fan did not intend to explain too much about these irrelevant details. Just like before, Sovereign 2 asked him the same question, and gave him the same warning. After the conversation, Ning Fan leaped into the Yellow Spring for the third time, and arrived at the entrance of EU Palace. Even though it was a pity to waste a chance to reverse time, Ning Fan was willing to wait for Zhu Er's technique to cool down for 3 million years. Zhu Er's figure emerged from the treasure box once again. This time his illusory technique was very smooth. With the previous successful experience, he did not fail and created a sage who looked like Ning Fan. He could not see any trace of the qi of the illusory technique at all. When Ning Fan saw the sage who was created by the illusory technique again, he still could not see any flaws in his qi. All he could feel was how magical this technique was. Even a cultivator at the second level of the heavenly being realm like him could not see through it. How many people in the world could? This illusory technique might seem useless, but if it's used appropriately, It could be a way to intimidate the enemy. The higher the cultivation base of an old monster, the more they would be afraid of existences like the sage. Since Ningfan could not see through the illusory technique, it was even more impossible for the ghosts with low spiritual intelligence in the palace to see through it. Zhu Er controlled the sage and stepped into the palace. At the moment he stepped into the palace, more than 700 ghosts rushed out. However, under the sage's third-level aura, all of them were shocked and fearful. None of them dared to resist as if they were facing a formidable enemy. Moreover, when Zhu Er controlled the sage to speak, the expressions of all the water ghosts turned sluggish and blank. By the order of Sage Tianpeng, the leader of the 9 sages of the Heavenly River, the commander of the 9 rivers, all of you are to be transferred to the 2 rivers immediately and wait for Sage Tianpeng's orders. No mistakes are allowed. Sage Tianpeng, obey the order. All the water ghosts were bewildered. With their extremely low spiritual intelligence, they could not understand Zhu Er's words at all. However, the word order seemed to have been engraved into their souls, urging them to leave this abandoned EU palace that they had been guarding for countless years. Even when their formidable enemies arrived in the past, they would rather die in battle than choose to run away. Even if their lives were to be wiped out, they would still turn into water ghosts and continue to guard this abandoned palace. It was because military orders must be obeyed. In the past, the military order they received was to guard the first heavenly river at all costs. Today, however, this military order had been changed. Because the leader of the 9 sages of the heavenly river had a new request, they had to be transferred to the second heavenly river. Is the one who gave the order really the sage Tianpeng? I don't know. I don't know. His voice is real. The aura force of this sage is also real. Perhaps the order is also real. Where is the second heavenly river? I don't know. I don't know. Then let's go and look for it. Because military orders must be obeyed. One by one, the water ghosts swam out of the palace gates of EU Palace and swam towards the distance. As they swam, each of them turned into light spots and disappeared into the ocean water, as if they had fulfilled their long-cherished wish. Ningfan remained silent for a while. Watching these water ghosts disappear, the first thing he felt in his heart was not the joy of clearing all the obstacles. Instead, he felt an indescribable sense of loss. So these water ghosts, are they the guards who died in battle here? Even after dying and turning into ghosts, they still did not forget their duty. They are indeed a group of guards who deserve respect from others. As soon as the water ghosts left, Zhu Er dispelled the illusory technique. As if all of his energy had been sucked out, he flew back into the treasure box to rest. Ningfan picked up the treasure box from the ground and asked the pig face on the box meaningfully. Speaking of which, what does the sage Tianpeng mean? What does the military order mean? The order you gave to those water ghosts by borrowing the aura force of the sage Tianpeng shouldn't be made up, right? Could it be true? Ahaha. What is Master talking about? I don't understand at all. Forget it. Since you don't want to say more, I won't ask anymore. The thing that your former master wants should be in this palace. You should take a rest first. I don't need you for the time being. Ningfan kept the treasure box and took out Tu Huang's left eye. Holding it in his hand, he entered the main hall of EU Palace. This was a palace that had been abandoned for many years. Other than the eternal lamp that had long been extinguished, there were no other decorations in the hall. At the center of the main hall, there was a well. As Ningfan stepped into the palace, Tu Huang's left eye began to shine with sparkling light. The light was as light as mist and drifted towards the well at the center of the hall. The devil race was good at setting up the connection points between different spaces to look like wells. However, the well in front of Ningfan was obviously not a connection point between spaces. Instead, it had another purpose. Is the thing that Tu Huang wants inside this well? Ningfan approached it step by step. He lowered his head and looked into the well. At the moment he lowered his head, an unimaginably scorching qi suddenly erupted from the well. At the moment when the heat wave swept towards him, Ningfan seemed to have expected it. He retreated immediately and activated the God Exterminating Shield to defend himself. However, even with the God Exterminating Shield's protection, Ning Fan was still directly burned into ashes by that scorching power. There was no way he could resist it at all. It was not fire. It was something that was even hotter than fire. It was extreme yang. The amount of extreme yang that was large enough to burn the entire eastern heaven. Throughout history, the 5 supreme beings of the Great Humble Clan would enter this place at a specific time to collect the extreme yang power above the sea surface. However, the amount of extreme yang they collected was only a tiny bit that drifted out from the well. Even so, they were already extremely satisfied. However, compared to the extreme yang in the well, the amount of extreme yang they collected was just too little. The extreme yang that killed Ning Fan in a single blow was far from what the tiny bit of extreme yang in the well could compare to. Let alone Ning Fan. Even if someone at the same level as Daoist Musang came here, he would definitely be killed by the extreme yang in a single blow. How could there be so much extreme yang power in this dry well? Is this dry well what Tu Huang is looking for? For the 3rd time, Ning Fan returned to the ship. What entered his ears was still Tu Huang's earnest warning. In this way, the time of this place will be fixed by this treasure box. If something really happens to you, you can also reverse time and return to this place. However, I have to remind you that the usage of this treasure box is not unlimited. Within a day, you can only be resurrected 10 times. In other words, you can only die 10 times in the depths of this yellow spring at most. Do you remember that? Yes. However, there are only 7 chances left for me to reverse time today. What? You have already died 3 times? Tu Huang, who was giving his earnest warning, was instantly shocked. This time, I have found what you want. It's the dry well in EU Palace, right? Is your goal to collect the extreme yang in the well? I don't know the origin of that dry well, but I can tell you clearly that this is definitely not possible. Ning Fan said with a serious expression. The extreme yang was a good item. It was an important material for a quasi-saint to open his eyes. However, he would need to be alive to collect it. According to the power of the extreme yang that erupted from the dry well, let alone his current self, even if his magic power increased by 10 times or even 100 times, as long as he is attacked by that dry well once, he would still die without a doubt. Even if he could reverse time 7 times, 70 times or even 700 times, Ning Fan did not think that he had the ability to collect the terrifying extreme yang in the well. This was not something that the cultivators of the illusory dream world could do. It was just like the reincarnation bell, that no one in the northern heaven immortal world could lift. If they could not lift it, they would not be able to lift it. It was not because their cultivation level was not high enough, but because their cultivation level was not high enough. The power of the attack of that dry well had definitely reached the 3rd step. If Tu Huang's goal was really to collect the extreme yang in the well, then even if Ning Fan was willing to help him, he could only apologize to him. It was not that he did not want to help him, but he really could not do it. If one is not a true saint, one will definitely die if he touches the well. This was the answer that Ning Fan obtained after paying the price of 1 death. Chapter 1051. That dry well is really as scary as you said. Tu Huang said with joy. Yes. In fact, I had already sensed it in advance the moment the extreme yang energy gushed out of the well. While I was retreating, I had already used all my defensive means. However, I only managed to hold on for an instant before I was burnt to ashes by the extreme yang energy in the well. I wasn't careless at all. The power of the extreme yang energy might have already reached the 3rd step. The power of the 3rd step, huh? I didn't expect that 108 vexations well that has been abandoned for many years would still have such terrifying power. This is very similar to what I saw in my dream. Good. This is great. If the power of this well is depleted, I would have a headache instead. 108 vexations well? Is that the name of this dry well? It's really a strange name. In that case, your objective shouldn't be the extreme yang energy in the well, right? Seeing that Tu Huang was not surprised but delighted, Ning Fan could not help but have a guess and asked. Of course not. This well has always been a place of great danger. It's a place where even saints would not dare to act rashly. Even if this well has been abandoned for many years and its power is not as good as before, I won't let you take the extreme young water from the well by force. Things will be easier now that you've found the well. Next, you just have to follow my instructions and do the same to the well. Ning Fan leaped into the yellow spring for the 4th time. Following the previous method, he entered the palace of EU Palace. At the center of the palace was the dry well that was filled with lifeless qi. Having learned his lesson from the last time, Ning Fan did not get too close to the well this time. Instead, he stopped 10 steps away from the well and chanted an incantation with his fingers. Using a water-dispelling art, he dispersed all the seawater in the palace to the outside of the palace. EU Palace, which was immersed in seawater, returned to its dry environment for the first time in countless years. After dispersing the seawater, Ning Fan squatted on the ground according to Tu Huang's instructions. His palms caressed the patterns on the floor of the palace, while the latter's instructions resounded in his ears. The yellow spring here isn't the complete yellow spring. It's just a part of it. I don't know why it was separated from the complete yellow spring of the true world and abandoned in the depths of the Fire Spirit Tower. The origin of the Fire Spirit Pagoda was very mysterious. No one knew why there was such a pagoda in the middle of the sealed space of 2 boundaries. Very few people knew that there was a part of the yellow spring in the pagoda. Supreme Ox Ghost had once served the divine ancestor of my clan. He was someone who had lived since the ancient times. However, even he couldn't figure out the significance of this pagoda being erected here. He could only speculate that the divine ancestor had erected it here. His objective was probably to construct the complete world of reincarnation. The well control formation in the abandoned EU Palace must have lost all of its spirituality. When you enter the Yellow Springs, the first thing you should do is not to approach the Well of Troubles, but to repair the formation in the palace. This is an important prerequisite for using the Well of Troubles normally. It can prevent the extreme young water in the well from attacking anyone who approaches. Your formation Dao cultivation is not weak, and your understanding of the general situation is even more profound. If you add on the 9 Nether Ancient Kingdom well-controlling formation in my hand, it is not impossible for you to slightly repair the well-controlling formation of Eo Palace. Here, take the formation diagram. Also, these are the materials that might be used for the repair. Take them and use them. You don't have to return the rest to me. Just keep them for yourself. Ning Fan followed the instructions and examined the patterns on the floor. He found out that these patterns were just ordinary decorations on the surface. In fact, they were unimaginably complex formation patterns. Due to the long period of time and the lack of people to repair them, the lines of these formation patterns had long been worn out. If they are not repaired, they would never be able to be used again. The formation here did not have any destructive or defensive power. It was just an operating formation. Its purpose was to operate the dry well in the palace. In Ning Fan's knowledge, most of the formation principles were very simple. There was only one formation I, which was the thing that was being controlled by the formation. The operation of the general situation was basically 2 points and 1 line. It was nothing more than going back and forth between the formation operator and the formation I. This type of formation would never be associated with the word complex. However, the well-controlling formation in front of him had broken his knowledge. The well-control formation here was simply unimaginably complex. There were more than 100 million formation eyes in the space of 100 zhang in the palace. One should know that the number of formation eyes could directly reflect the level of the formation. The complexity of the formation here was something that Ning Fan had never seen in his life. It was even more complicated than the formation marks of the saint in the corner of the strange eyeball in the past. If he were to find a formation of the same level, perhaps only the strongest formation that Ning Fan had ever seen in his life, the immemorial dust-defying formation that he had used during the blood sacrifice in the ancient wild region could be comparable to it. However, the immemorial dust-defying formation was a formation that was given to the Fan clan in the ancient times by the Lord of Tribulation Sense. Due to its extreme destructive power, it was so complicated. The formation here, on the other hand, was just an operating formation. Was there a need to set it up so complicated? Or perhaps, This indirectly showed one thing. The difficulty of controlling the 108 Well of Troubles was much greater than the blood sacrifice of the entire ancient wild region. If Tu Huang did not give him any help, Ning Fan estimated that he would need to study this place for tens of millions of years before he could understand the structure of the formation. Fortunately, Tu Huang had given him the formation map. Thus, it was not difficult for him to understand the formation here. The well-control formation map of Nine Nether Ancient Country. The name of the formation map made Ning Fan pay some attention to it. Nine Nether Ancient Country. Of course, he just paid attention to it. He had no idea what the name referred to at all. Ning Fan did not intend to delve deeper into it. He only paid some attention to it because his God-exterminating shield also had the word Ancient Country as its prefix. The ancient country in the God-exterminating shield referred to a specific country. As for the Nine Nether Ancient Country, could it be a country that once existed? Or perhaps the ancient word was just an adjective and not its name. Ning Fan spent around 2 hours to roughly read through the map of the well-controlled formation. Just by skimming through it once, he felt that half of his mental strength had been exhausted. He felt a little dizzy and had a clear understanding of the complexity of this formation. Even if he had the formation map, Ning Fan did not think that he could understand this formation in a short period of time. He could not understand it at all. It was even more impossible for him to comprehend it. However, this did not affect Ning Fan from repairing the formation step by step according to the formation map. It was just like in the cultivation world. The sect protection grand formation of a large sect required a formation master to set up. However, the maintenance and operation of the formation only required the disciples of the sect to operate it according to the map. It was not important whether he understood it or not. As long as he had enough attainments in formations to operate according to the map, it would be enough. First, he needed to redraw the destroyed formation lines. The formation, which was less than 100 zhang in length alone, required more than 3,000 types of materials to draw the formation lines. Moreover, all of them were rare materials. Fortunately, Tu Huang had given Ning Fan a lot of materials to repair the formation. Occasionally, he would be able to find similar materials to replace the missing materials. Thus, the process of redrawing the formation lines was very smooth. For hours later, the restoration of the formation lines was completed. After that, Ning Fan needed to open the void formation eye of the formation in sequence, and place various immortal materials in the formation eye as the source of power for the formation. The formation eye of such a profound formation was already hard to find. It was not in the space in front of him but in another void space which acted as the formation eye. The 100 Zhang Palace actually had hundreds of millions of void formation eyes. If Ning Fan were to search for them one by one, it would take him countless years. Fortunately, Ning Fan had the formation map. With the map in his hand, Ning Fan moved at lightning speed. He lifted his finger and cut open the void space in this place one after another, and placed the corresponding materials in them. Just like that, Ning Fan finished filling the formation eye with power after a day. In the end, Ning Fan spent another half a day to activate the secret word force, to slightly change the general force of this place. The flow of the general force resonated with the flow of the formation. In this way, the well-controlling formation could finally be considered to have been truly repaired. As the formation was repaired, the dry well which was originally filled with lifeless qi suddenly changed. As time passed, the dry well gradually emitted the breath of a living creature. The bricks and stones on the walls of the well began to wriggle like living flesh and blood. The scene was extremely strange. As for the agitated extreme yang that had accumulated in the well, it gradually calmed down. Then, it turned into large balls of extreme yang flames and turned into golden well water. Even though the well water still emitted a terrifying temperature, it no longer attacked recklessly just because someone was approaching it. Then, an ancient voice reverberated in the palace. It came from the 108 Well of Troubles that was operating normally. The voice was cold and indifferent. Cultivator controlling the well, which sect's immortal edict do you have to wake me up without my permission? Quickly take out your immortal edict to prove your identity. If you don't have the immortal edict, you will be regarded as trespassing into the 9 nether realms. You will be punished by having your cultivation base crippled, and your soul imprisoned in the yellow spring netherworld for eternity. The voice was not loud, but when it fell into Ningfan's ears, it carried an unimaginable might of heaven and earth that reverberated continuously. Ningfan felt a sharp pain in his eardrums. It was as if he was not facing a dry well, but a living third-step saint. Of course, as this well had been abandoned for many years, it was extremely weak even though it had reached the third step. Otherwise, Ningfan would not just feel a sharp pain in his eardrums. He would probably find it difficult to even stand. There's one thing you have to pay attention to. Once the formation is successfully repaired, the 108 Well of Troubles will be awakened. This well is not an inanimate object. Instead, it's an existence similar to an ancient divine spirit. Don't look at me with doubtful eyes. I have no idea what an ancient divine spirit is. I have traveled to the true world countless times in my dreams, but I rarely heard anything related to ancient divine spirits. It seems like the existence of ancient divine spirits is something even more ancient than the true world itself. Forget it. You won't understand even if I tell you so much. You just have to remember that this well is not an inanimate object. You must treat it as an ancient senior and treat it with caution. What you are going to do next will be extremely risky. You have to impersonate someone else in order to use the well. This well has been sleeping for a long time. Since it has just been awakened by you, its consciousness must not be very clear. With my attainments in illusion techniques, and some special techniques, I will try to deceive this well. If you succeed, you will continue with the next step. However, if you fail and it sees through your deception, our plan will end here. You don't have to care about anything else and just run away. You must not be killed by the well. The ability of this well is highly likely to exceed the ability of your treasure box to reverse the flow of time. Do you understand what I mean? If I am killed by the well after it awakens, it is highly likely that I will not be able to reverse the flow of time. Is this what I mean? Tu Huang's words were still ringing in Ningfan's ears. His expression did not change, but his spirit was unprecedentedly focused and cautious. What he was going to do next was to impersonate a disciple of a powerful force in the true world to use the well. If the impersonation fails, he must escape immediately. Tu Huang is an immortal emperor of the palm position of illusion. I wonder if his illusion technique can deceive the well which has just awakened. Junior, quickly show me the immortal imperial edict that you are holding. The well urged him once again. The aura force it exerted was much stronger than the first time. The immortal imperial edict is here. Ningfan took a small step forward, leaving a footprint of golden flames on the ground. He used the prestige art to remove the aura force of the well's words. Then he turned his hand and a golden book appeared in his hand. He pushed it slightly towards the top of the well, using his magic power. Of course, this golden book was fake. It was created by Tu Huang using his illusion technique. If the well was in its peak state, it certainly would not be deceived by such a small Tao of illusion technique. However, it was not in its peak state right now. Thus, there was a slight chance of success. Suddenly, a palm that looked like a human or a beast reached out from the golden water of the well. It grabbed the golden book and dragged it into the well. After tens of breaths, the well's voice resounded again. However, the golden book was not returned to Ningfan. This time, the well's voice was not as cold as before. Instead, it sounded a little more polite. So you are a disciple of the Fengling sect. I hope that you will forgive me for my rudeness just now. However, I didn't expect that the sect would still need my help even though I have been abandoned for many years and ended up in the illusionary world. It is my honor to do so. However, there is one thing that I must warn you about. Because you have been abandoned, the amount of extreme young water that you have left is less than 1/10,000th of what you had when you were at your peak. Besides, the reincarnation in this illusionary world has a huge restriction on you. If you want to see the reincarnation of the third ring of the heavenly Tao from me, I'm afraid you will be disappointed. My current strength is only enough to see the reincarnation of the second ring of the heavenly Tao at most. Moreover, I can only see a very small part of it. Please forgive me, venerable envoy. If you want to see the reincarnation, please do as you please. I have just woken up and I need some rest. Thus, I won't be serving you anymore. Please forgive me, venerable envoy." As soon as he finished speaking, the wriggling of the bricks of the well disappeared. The life chi in the well was also withdrawn. The entire palace regained its silence. Only the faint sound of the formation's operation could be heard. Seeing that the well believed his identity, Ning Fan felt relieved inwardly. Very well. I have succeeded in this step. Next, I can use the power of the well to see the past, present, and future that Tu Huang wanted to see. Kiki, it was a little embarrassing to talk about it. The Slaughter Emperor had explained so much to Jiang Yi, but Jiang Yi had only understood the phrase, "This well can see the past, present, and future." The complete 6 paths of reincarnation should include the 12 Yin mountains, the 14 Yin rivers, the 10 ghost gates, the 2 forgotten rivers, the 9 nether yellow springs sea, the reincarnation gate, the Tao transformation mountain, and many other components. The 6 paths of reincarnation is the largest reincarnation connection point in the world. Here, you can learn everything you want to know. The 108 Well of Troubles is one of the reincarnation connection points, but compared to the River of Forgetfulness, its level is actually much lower, and its deduction power is also far inferior to the River of Forgetfulness. Speaking of the Well of Troubles, I have to tell you how it got its name. One look and I can tell that you don't know much about Buddhist scriptures. Don't you know that in Buddhism, there is a saying called the 108 Troubles? When we talk about the 108 Troubles, we have to talk about the 6 roots of a human. These 6 roots are divided into good, evil, and peaceful. They are also divided into pure and tainted. Altogether, there are 36 troubles. In one lifetime, one will encounter 36 kinds of troubles. If it is the past, present, and future lives, one will encounter 108 kinds. This is also the reason why the temple bells usually ring 108 times. I don't understand. The place that the Slaughter Emperor mentioned, and the matter about the reincarnation connection point. I don't understand at all. You asked me what the reincarnation connection point is? Of course, it refers to the place where many reincarnations are connected. What? You still don't understand? This is such a headache. How can I explain it to you? I'm not good at teaching people with words. Reincarnation is a very mysterious thing. It doesn't just have one layer. Instead, it has layers upon layers. Every layer of reincarnation is like a parallel universe. Every person that extends out from that parallel universe can have countless past and countless future. You can understand the reincarnation connection point as the boundary of different parallel universes. Your past might not necessarily be what you have experienced in this lifetime. Your future might not necessarily be what you have encountered in this lifetime. Do you understand? You still don't understand? Let me explain it to you this way. The so-called reincarnation connection point is the place where you can see your past, present, and future. You should understand it now, right? The 108 Well of Troubles can show you your past and future. Such a place is called the reincarnation connection point. Oh, interesting. You said that you have encountered a lake which is located in one of the lower worlds in the 4 heavens and 9 worlds that you mentioned? It can reflect the past? Yes. That lake is a reincarnation connection point. However, a complete reincarnation connection point can reflect the past and the future at the same time. The place that you have encountered is probably not complete, but incomplete. Besides, the reincarnation connection points also have different levels. The higher the level of the reincarnation connection point, the more things you can see. Some past and future that are related to the great secrets of heaven and earth can only be seen at the highest level of the reincarnation connection point. If you don't understand what I have just said, you better remember it. These are all great knowledge that I have heard from the saints. You just need to remember it and slowly digest it. There are only benefits and no disadvantages. Do you understand? I don't understand. For the first time, Ning Fan realized that the generation gap between him and Tu Huang was actually so huge. He actually could not understand any of the knowledge about reincarnation that Tu Huang told him. Countless reincarnation connections. Layers upon layers. The past is not the past and the future is not the future. Parallel universe. I don't understand. I don't understand, because Tu Huang often dreamt about the true world. He often listened to the saints preaching the Tao in his dreams. Therefore, most of the things that he comprehended were knowledge that only third-step saints could understand. It was definitely not something that Ning Fan could understand with just a few words. Of course, it doesn't matter if he doesn't understand it. Ning Fan just needs to know what he has to do at this moment. He slowly walked to the side of the well, and stuck his head out to look at the water. This time, he naturally would not be attacked by the extreme yang power in the well anymore. However, according to Tu Huang, if he dares to do something like snatching the extreme yang power in this well, he would still be attacked. This kind of greed must be restrained. The ancient well was calm and tranquil. However, it was reflecting many scenes. Those scenes were none other than the things that happened in the past, and the future of countless cultivators. There were too many of them. There were too many scenes reflected in the well, making it impossible for Ning Fan to see any of them clearly. Only by using the correct method could he see what he wanted to know from the well. In the past, Ning Fan had gone to the Sword Inquisition Lake in the Sword World. In the reflection of the lake, he saw his past life as a butterfly. According to Tu Huang, the Sword Inquisition Lake was an incomplete reincarnation connection point. It could only see the past but not the future. Moreover, the Sword Inquisition Lake could only see his past. However, the Well of 108 Worries was different. According to Tu Huang, this well could not only see his past and future, but also the past and future of others. The task that Tu Huang gave Ning Fan was to ask him to help him check a certain part of her past. She had a huge doubt in her heart. That doubt was because she suspected that her memory had been altered by a certain powerful expert. She must confirm it through the Well of 108 Worries. She wanted to see if the past reflected by the well was the same as her memory. Ning Fan, do you know that there was once a woman who told me something? She said that I am not me. Only when I am not me will I be me. Don't you understand again? Sigh. It's really tiring to talk to you. That woman said that she had altered my memory before. However, I don't believe her. If you can deceive the well, bring my left eye with you and help me check my past. The past reflected by the well is real. It is so real that even a fourth-step immortal sovereign can't change it. No matter how strong that woman is, she won't be able to reach the bottom of the yellow spring, let alone change this reality. She is Supreme Venerated 10 Bs. She is the other Supreme Venerated being among the 5 great Supreme Venerated beings of my clan other than Supreme Venerated Ox Ghost. Her strength is ranked 5th while Supreme Venerated Ox Ghost is ranked 4th. She has lived in Lioli City of the Middle State for countless years. However, everyone has been deceived by her illusory technique. Everyone thinks that she is just a singer who has just arrived at Lioli City. Everyone just calls her Afong. She can transform into thousands of different appearances as she pleases. However, the one she uses the most is Afeng's face. According to her, she used this face when she altered my memory in the past. Go and take a look at my past and see if this face has ever appeared. Tu Huang's words echoed in Ning Fan's ears. There was an indescribable helplessness and nervousness in her voice. She was completely different from her arrogant and domineering self in the past. Ning Fan remained silent for a while. Then he took out a scroll and slowly unrolled it. On the scroll, there was a woman whom Ning Fan found very familiar. At first glance, it was actually Dugu. However, if he takes a closer look, there was something different about her. The woman in the portrait had an extremely similar appearance to Dugu. However, she was wearing the clothes of a singer. It was not Dugu. Her chi was completely different. The woman in the portrait was the strange woman whom he met on the way to save Old Wu. It was the strange woman who looked like Dugu. Vast expanse butterfly, do you need help? It seems like you don't know me anymore. I am Afong of Xiufang. The little turtle you are looking for is at the Southern Medicine Temple outside the Eastern City Gate. It was the woman who called herself Afong. On that day, Ning Fan already felt that the strange woman's cultivation base was unfathomable. However, he did not expect that this strange woman was actually one of the 5 great supreme venerated beings of the Great Humble Clan. Her true identity was the Supreme 10 Wasps. Why does this woman look so similar to Dugu? Why does this woman know that I am a butterfly? Why did she say you don't know me? Weren't these the words he heard in the hidden scripture pagoda given to him by the ancient Chaos Emperor? Outside the last stone door. Is it a coincidence? However, with so many coincidences put together, there is something wrong no matter how I look at it. My mission is to borrow the power of the 108 Well of Troubles to look through Tu Huang's past, to find out if this person has ever appeared before. After looking through it, I will engrave a copy of what I saw into Tu Huang's left eye. After helping Tu Huang, if I still have doubts in my heart, I can naturally use this well to look at my past and future. I have already seen the past. It is the experiences of the butterfly in the previous lives. As for the future, can something like the future really be seen so easily? Interesting. What will my future be like? Or perhaps, the future of Zhixiu could not be seen from the well at all. After all, the path of Zhixiu had already been cut off by heaven. It was not surprising that he could not see any future. Ning Fan kept the portrait and took out Tu Huang's left eye with a flip of his hand. In order to see the past and future of others, he needed some medium. He extracted a trace of qi from Tu Huang's left eye and threw it into the golden well water. All of a sudden, the countless images reflected in the well water began to decrease. Not long after, only Tu Huang was left in the image of the well water. In those images, there was Tu Huang's past when he was young, the shepherdess's past when he was waiting on the ship with a frown, and the future that was filled with blood. The future is filled with blood. Is there some kind of bloody calamity happening? Ning Fan frowned. Even though Tu Huang did not tell him to look at the future, he still saw it unintentionally. It seems like Tu Huang's future is going to be filled with a huge calamity. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.